All right, everybody. Welcome to Athens-Clarke County. The mayor and commission is gathered here. Some of us in City Hall and some of us across the community for a special called session here on April 21st. And what will follow is our regularly scheduled agenda setting session. Given that we have a special called session with voting, I'm going to go ahead and ask the clerk to call roll.
Davenport.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Blink.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Denson.
Here.
Neesmith.
Present.
Edwards.
Here.
Harrod.
Present.
Thornton.
Present.
Hamby.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The first thing I'm going to ask for is an amending of the agenda for two additional items. Item number 4 will be extension of our local emergency, just to provide for continuation of the emergency management structure and the powers of the manager under our local emergency. And then the 5th will be a resolution recommending the local state of emergency and our shelter-in-place recommendation because we now are under statewide mandate.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right. So I've got a motion from Commissioner Edwards. I've got a second from Commissioner Link for amending the agenda to include those items. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So the agenda is amended. First order of new business under suspension of rules is a public hearing and deliberation regarding 0.557 acres on Nowhere Road. We do have public input on this item, so I'm going to go ahead and stop now, and our able technology staff is going to facilitate public input on this matter.
Do we need a motion for suspension of rules?
Thank you, Commissioner. I would accept a motion for suspension of rules.
So moved. Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Neesmith, a second from Commissioner Hamby for suspension of rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now ready for public input, and we've got a camera set up in City Hall. Sir, if you just go ahead and read your name and address for the record, and you may go ahead and begin with your comments.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Chuck Palmer. I'm at Troutman Sanders at 600 Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia. Here on behalf of Verizon Wireless, I'm at Troutman Sanders. I graduated from college here a few years ago. I have to comment on this. Just coming through Athens and being in here with nobody around is just a unique experience. I know y'all are seeing it, and the same thing, frankly, in downtown Atlanta right now. Just interesting times. We've had some conversations with your lawyers and about the possibility of settling this lawsuit. On behalf of Verizon Wireless, I've been representing them and their predecessors since the late 1980s, and we've had a handful of these cases over the years. We've never lost one. We lost one at a district court level, in the 11th Circuit reversed it. So we're batting 1,000, which is good. But the other thing is that Verizon is a repeat customer, if you will, before local governments. And we want to have a good relationship with the local governments and with which we work. And so, litigation is always a last resort. And so we had some conversations, received some input back, and what we are proposing to do and have discussed with your council is reducing the height of the tower by 30 feet from 196 to 166 feet. 6 feet of that, by the way, is the foundation and the lightning rod. And we've also enhanced the landscape plantings with 12 willow oaks of 2.5-inch caliper. And my quick Google research shows that those get to be 60 to 100 feet in height. So I think that'll provide some substantial screening in the area around the site that otherwise did not have trees. We've also proposed to narrow the width of basically an access easement area. So with that, I hope that you would consider the resolution of this case and the settlement, if you will. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I don't know if there's any opposition. I think I'm the only one here in the room, but if there were to be any, I would like to respectfully reserve my remaining time for rebuttal, and I would be very happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. And with that, I'll stop here at 7:14.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you.
Is there any other public input tonight? Technology staff, apologize, we're obviously here under unusual circumstances. Is there any recorded input? All right, seeing that there is none, we're going to go on to commission consideration of these items, beginning with the item that Mr. Palmer referenced, our public hearing and deliberation about this land use request. And certainly be interested in entertaining any commissioner's input on this item. Commissioner Denson, I'm going to go ahead and recognize you for input.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to these interesting circumstances, there was a number of constituents who did reach out to me with input, but they did not feel it was safe or healthy for them to travel to City Hall. So they sent some to me and asking that if I would go ahead and read this into the record. So if everybody can give me a little bit of patience here, I'm just going to try to read these this handful of constituent comments. First one is from Aura Morris of 3075 Smoky Road. This is Aura Morris, one of the residents represented at the last commission meeting where the Nowhere Road cell tower was discussed. First of all, I want to say thank you. I am so grateful to each and every one of you for taking the time to hear our case last winter, for listening and using your hearts and minds to try to fairly interpret the county's own code and to respect our needs and desires. That experience was powerful for me, and I was deeply moved by getting to participate in our government in that way. Also, I know you are all working so hard right now to deal with the current public health crisis, and I am grateful and proud of the way Athens has handled the situation. Thank you for your service. I'm writing today to say a few things. I was sad and discouraged to hear that Verizon had contacted each of our commissioners with what seems to amount to threat, that they have threatened to sue the county, and that because of the current state of overwhelm and apparent futility of fighting back, the commission plans to move ahead with accepting a modified proposal by Verizon. I believe this would be a tragic mistake. It is clear that the county and all the grounds for this permit to be denied. It would be very sad indeed if the commission capitulated to the threats of Verizon, simply because they are overwhelmed at this time and don't know if the county could win a court case. I can understand, certainly, the desire for this issue to simply go away, and the uncertainty about whether there is a successful path forward. I had to work hard to find the motivation just to write this letter, since it would be much easier for me to just give up and admit defeat, as it were, with everything going on right now. I know this is not the foremost issue in your minds at this moment, but it is an important issue in the forefront of our minds, and those of my neighbors and friends. Please don't give up on us, out of fear or overwhelm. I don't know what the options are, honestly, but if there is a way for you to postpone this decision so that we can continue to be a part of this conversation, please do so. Please don't move forward with this while we are in quarantine and cannot come to speak up for ourselves in front of you. If it cannot be postponed, please stand by your earlier decision. If a multi-billion-dollar corporation can walk into our town and threaten the commission and then walk away with what they want, what kind of place is that to live? That's not the Athens I want to live in. There may not be a large chance of winning the fight with this company like this, but there is a chance. Other cities have won this fight before us, and principles matter, especially now. Please don't give up without a fight. Shelley Ruth of 3005 Smoky Road says, my question is, what is progressive about letting a corporate entity decide how or why decisions are made for this community? Why would we violate our own ordinance to favor a corporate entity outside of our community? Why do we have a city attorney if not to fight for us in these instances? Why has buildings in this project begun weeks ago when the permit was already denied? Given that this tower is about 1.2 miles from the county line, whom is this tower really going to serve? By Verizon's own admission, there were no complaints of coverage issues, but simply an employee engineer with a map determining where and how their company continued to litter America's landscape. If I can spend the time trying to protect my community, why can't you? There are many instances where the court has held that the positive does not outweigh the negative in approaching this deviation from existing statute. There we have Doug Lumpkin at 125 Kevin Lane. I have lived at 125 Kevin Lane for almost 50 years. I worked at the clock factory General Time for 36 years until they went out of business. Now I am retired. I've seen a lot of the changes in my years out here, including dirt roads getting paved and more recently the arrival of city water. We are still waiting on trash service. I was surprised to hear the debate on building this new tower is ongoing. I thought things were settled last year. We already have a tower that I can see from my yard, and it is so big it's got that blinking light on it. I don't have any complaints about cell phone service in this area, and I don't see why we would need a second cell tower for me to look at in my backyard. Thank you for hearing my concerns. We have Troy Simon located at 185 Kevin Lane. I would like everyone to know that if it wasn't for the current state of emergency surrounding COVID-19, my neighbors and I would be at City Hall in person to read our comments. But given the situation, Commissioner Deb Stinson has kindly offered to read these comments. I would like to thank the Mayor and Commission for the care and concern you all have shown in determining the need for the proposed Nowhere Road, Verizon cell phone tower. It was clear during December 3rd's Mayor and Commission meeting that y'all heard the needs and desires of the Smoky Road community given your unanimous decision to deny the rezoning application for the Verizon cell tower. You all deserve great praise for standing up to a multinational corporation and showed our community that the power a group of engaged citizens have in local government. Given the data Verizon provided, it was clear that the need for a cell phone tower did not overcome the need to preserve our neighborhood, a dedicated green belt around Athens, and one of Athens-Clarke County's last agricultural areas. I was troubled to hear that after the Commission's unanimous decision to deny the application for the tower, Verizon has attempted to supersede the needs and desires of our community by threatening the Commission with a series of costly lawsuits. Given these strong economic threats by Verizon, I want to remind everyone of the facts surrounding the need for a new cell phone tower in the North Athens neighborhood. A very large telecommunications tower already exists 1 1/3 miles to the west, which Verizon can locate their tenant on, which is the preferred option specified in the county's own ordinances on telecommunication towers. Verizon stated they would never co-locate on the existing tower since it was too close to another Verizon antenna termed the Dale Tower to the north on 441. However, AT&T already has their antenna on both of these existing towers in question. So why can't Verizon simply do the same as AT&T? I reviewed Verizon's own data on the need for a new tower compared to co-locating, and co-locating on the existing tower would actually result in less signal overlap or less redundancy in coverage with Verizon's 2 other antennas in the area. Given this, it is shocking Verizon states that co-location is not an option. In Verizon's application, their primary stated reason for building a new tower in the area was to offload the capacity or traffic from their existing antenna locations. However, their data shows that building a new tower instead of co-locating on the existing American tower would only increase capacity by 11 to 15%. Verizon wants to call this a more than 20-fold increase in capacity by doing some division. Well, let's all remember that a fraction of an already small number is still just a small number. Small is small regardless of how you look at it. Verizon's second stated objective for building a new tower was to increase their coverage area. However, based on their data, building a new tower instead of co-locating on the existing tower would only increase on-street coverage by less than 1%, increase car coverage by 13%, and increase in-building coverage by around 19%. Finally, the planning department listed in their own report on the compatibility of the project with ordinance standards in relation to the project. Quote, 1 tower exists within 2 miles of the proposed location. The application report states that co-location on that tower will improve coverage for 2/3 of the desired coverage area, unquote. This suggests that the planning department was assuming a 67% increased coverage, not the 1 to 19% increase that Verizon's own data shows us. Thus, it seems that the Planning Commission may not have made a decision with accurate information. Together, these facts do not seem like a good rationale to build a new 150-foot tower in one of the last rural green spaces of Athens County. I know since December 3rd's meeting, Verizon has made several concessions on the proposed new tower, including lowering the height by 30 feet and planting 12 small trees, supposedly to hide the view of the tower someday. But we all know these things don't matter and not the point of this argument. The reality is this is the first proposed new telecommunications tower where antenna co-location is possible. So the decision to co-locate the Verizon antenna is important not just for preserving the character of one of the last rural green spaces in Athens-Clarke County, but it will have implications for all proposed cell towers in the future. The Telecommunication Act of 1996 forbids local regulations to discriminate among providers. Therefore, if we allow Verizon to build a new tower less than 2 miles from an existing tower, we will set a dangerous precedent for the county and hamstring our own ordinance. In effect, preventing the county from enforcing its ordinances in the future for Verizon or any other telecommunication company. So please ask yourself, how will you feel when a new cell tower is proposed to be built in your backyard next, when co-location is a viable, available option on a nearby tower? This one is from Danny Walker on 160 Calvin Street. We've been here before. We are counting on our leaders to hold the people in District 9. No means no. Let's move on. Ron Johnson of 110 Kevin Lane says, on December 3rd, 2019, I sent an email stating that I was not in favor of the installation of a cell phone tower on Nowhere Road in Clarke County. I am still not in favor of this tower. I don't see the need for this tower when there is an existing tower within 1.5 miles. It seems to me that we, the residents of North Clarke County, are the dumping ground for everything the rest of the county doesn't want, and the last one to get whatever needed government services. This one is from Mar Turner. So my name is Mark Turner, and I own land within 1,200 feet of the proposed cell tower. Thanks to each and every one of you for your hard work and commitment to this county as we navigate these difficult times. The responsibility on your shoulders is tremendous. I ask you all today to stand by your decision to prevent the building of a new cellular tower on Nowhere Road on the grounds of it being unnecessary and redundant, inappropriate given the zoning and character of the surrounding area, and against the wishes of local residents and landowners who will be impacted by it. I understand that there are legal grounds for the denial of a new cellular tower construction where one already exists nearby, which is the case here. The new Verizon tower is unnecessary and redundant based on the following. There is a cell tower available for co-locating 1.3 miles away from the proposed site that would cause no disruptions to the local community. The construction of a brand new tower in this area would increase capacity by only 11 to 15% and coverage by only 1 to 19%. According to Verizon's own company data, compared to co-locating to the existing tower. It is worth permitting Verizon to build a brand new 150-foot tower in the middle of farms and neighborhoods that are protected by agriculture residential zoning for a minor increase in coverage? How does this benefit and protect the people of Athens-Clarke County, their property, and community? If the decision of the commission, the voices of the people impacted, and the county's own ordinances are overrun in favor of Verizon's bottom line, what precedent does this set for Clarke County for the foreseeable future? Thank you again for taking the time to consider this decision carefully amidst all the other hardships we are facing as a community. Your work is invaluable and you are making the future. Annie White at 130 Kevin Lane writes, I have lived here for 40 years or more. This is an appeal to you. Please don't allow a cell tower to be built in our neighborhood. We want to see this area grow or maintain the measure of safety we have. The tower is built here. I believe if someone was interested in coming to live here, it would cause them to look elsewhere. Not only that, but some who are here will probably leave if their circumstances allow. Our community needs facilities that will enhance it, not a cell tower. And just got 2 left. Kyle Hamlin Filkins of 3010 Smoky Road writes, it is truly disappointing for the proposed Verizon cell phone tower on Nowhere Road to be on the commissioners' meeting agenda again. We, your voting constituents, have spoken against this proposed cell phone tower many times out of concern for decreased property values, permanently negatively impacting the neighborhood country remote feel, and opening the door for other unsightly and misfitting additions to our neck of the woods. It is beautiful and remote out here around Smoky and Nowhere Roads. Have you been out here lately? The rolling hills, forested landscape, creek bridges, and clear views of the sunset are all truly remarkable. Allowing this Verizon cell phone tower to be built just 1 mile from another cell phone tower is needless. Please vote against the cell phone tower on Nowhere Road. Thank you for your time. The last one is from Gareth Cosby. He writes, I own a farm at 185 Kevin Lane that will be affected by this cell tower. Nobody has spoken up in support of this proposed cell phone tower at any meeting, but many have spoken up against it. I thank you all for listening to us during the November meeting where you tabled the vote in order that more people in the neighborhood could learn more about this proposal, and again at the December meeting where you listened to our arguments and unanimously voted against the new cell tower. Verizon lawyers have done their job to bully and scare you all with lawsuits between now and then. It's a sad day for me to see a large corporation give so little consideration to the people they are impacting. We love the area for its forests, pastures, and community, and it's some of the last green space owned by individuals in Athens. Maybe big business got us this time, but let the record show that North Athenians care about their neighborhood and their neighbors. Many thanks. And so that was all public comment sent in by constituents that live in the area of District 9 or District 5. And then just for my own brief comments, I wish we weren't in the situation where we are now for many of the reasons that was spoken in some of the comments. but I do understand the situation that we are, and not an easy one. So prepare for us to move forward on this.
Other commissioner comment on this item? Attorney Drake, could you just speak procedurally to where we are now?
Oh.
Yes.
You didn't see my hand?
I see it now, Commissioner Thornton. Go right ahead.
I would be amiss if I didn't comment. I always had strong feelings about this issue. And I really think that initially I was concerned about a lawsuit because this is a really awkward time with everything going on. But I want to commend the people in North Athens for standing up. It's almost it almost reminds me of a David and Goliath moment. North Athens has been overlooked for so long, and it's almost like this has wakened a sleeping giant. I personally will not be voting in favor of this. I know the concerns on both sides, and I'm trying to be objective, but somewhere you gotta stop some stuff. And you're right. If we continue this path, everybody and anybody will just trample over the people who have invested in their area. I listened to the attorney talk about when he came, I guess he was at UGA and how empty the streets are. Apparently he doesn't know anything about North Athens. So it's easy to come in here and it is bullying. It is bullying. I won't be supporting this. I want to thank my fellow commissioners that stood up and still stand up on this situation. I do understand both sides of it, but I won't be supporting this. And I want North Athens residents to know this is a win for you. You have had a voice, but now how do we change those old laws, a 1995, 1996 law that is almost suffocating the average citizen? We got a bigger job ahead of us, guys, and we've got to work together that this doesn't happen anywhere else, or even attempted to help anywhere, attempted to be helped anywhere else, just because something is in black and white. When a law is on the book, it doesn't mean that it's right, but it does mean that folk who are not conscious or care about other folk will use. So no, I'm not going to support this. And wherever the chips fall, I'm prepared for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Attorney Drake, is there anything to provide regarding context to this before I move on to other public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will be happy to provide context. I will mind, don't forget to give the attorney from Verizon his opportunity for rebuttal before we proceed. But
certainly,
I will go ahead and read the ordinance since that's required in our regulations. It's an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to special use approval of a wireless telecommunications facility in the AR Agricultural Residential District on an approximate 0.557 acre portion of parcel of land at 855 Nowhere Road, comprised of 34 acres in total and for other purposes. This application, ordinance, an application for a special use permit for 855 Nowhere Road in the AR Residential District is before the Mayor and Commission for its consideration this evening. The approval of this application will result in the resolution of currently pending litigation in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Georgia. Following the Mayor and Commission's denial of December 13th of the application, the applicant filed a lawsuit in the Middle District of Georgia challenging the denial. The applicant has agreed to the following conditions of approval for the purpose of resolving litigation. Reduction in the height of the proposed telecommunication tower by at least 30 feet. Reduction in the size of the proposed gravel turnaround on the northeast side of the proposed telecommunications tower, which will save more of the natural tree canopy on the proposed site. Planting of additional trees along the southeast side of the proposed telecommunications tower provide additional screen of the site, and that is 12 willow oaks. And the revision of the binding application materials, that is the letter of intent and site plans to reflect the conditions discussed above. The conditions that are included in these conditions, as I've just read, are included in the ordinance that is before the commission tonight for approval, or consideration for adoption and approval and or denial. The approval of the special, I will conclude by saying that the approval of this special use permit with these conditions will resolve litigation currently pending in the Middle District of Georgia.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. I appreciate you providing kind of the context and route for this. I want to go ahead and recognize Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I have a question, and this might be something that the Verizon attorney could answer in his rebuttal. What is the reason that Verizon can't locate this antenna on the nearby tower that's 1.3 or 1.5 miles away? And what precisely is the increased coverage that will be gotten out of this new tower?
Okay, thanks for that, Commissioner. If Mr. Palmer wants to provide rebuttal now that Commissioner Denson has read the other members of the public's input, and Commissioner Link has asked that question, now would be a good time to do that.
Thank you very much. Again, it's Chuck Palmer. Let me address the question about the co-location first. That was the most recent one. The area of improved service will be about 11 times greater with the new tower, and about 3 times more residents will have improved coverage. And this really gets to the issue of why not co-locate on the existing tower. And believe me, and I've been doing this now for, gosh, almost 25 years. Verizon would absolutely co-locate on that existing tower if it would work, because Verizon has no. I mean, they're a for-profit company. It costs them about $1 million to build a new cell tower, and so there's absolutely no reason for them not to go on an existing tower if it would work for them. And so basically you can sort of look at that and say, okay, if there's no reason for them to try to build a new tower if an existing tower would work. They co-locate all the time. I mean, that's a word that we use frequently. Co-location is always their preferred model, and that's what they would do. I mean, frankly, if it were up to Verizon, if they could be like Channel 8 and put one tower on the top of Stone Mountain and cover all of Georgia, then that's what they would do. But unfortunately, the way cellular systems work, networks work, you end up having to build sort of a honeycomb of towers, and that's what this tower is designed to do: is to both fill a gap in their coverage, and also to enhance signal capacity. And so we wouldn't be here before you. It would have been much easier to have filed an application to co-locate on that existing tower if that would have provided the needs for the community. One of the things, and there was a reference made to the public health crisis, one of the things that has been demonstrated by the public health crisis is that there is a real need for the expansion of broadband service and wireless service. And those two needs have really been amplified. And there was actually, I read an article the other day in the newspaper talking about somebody who was a student at the University of Georgia who was having to drive to McDonald's to sit outside McDonald's so that her laptop would work in order to be able to access the internet. And so I think that none of us this is unbelievable, the times that we're in. but I think that it does illustrate some of the needs that we have to provide for, for the citizens. And that's what that 1996 Federal Telecom Act was tried to achieve, was to basically make it easier, if you will, for the cell towers to be built, for wireless coverage to be provided. I think that was the intent of that 1996 Act by Congress, and so that's sort of the framework and the landscape that we're in, that we're all operating under today. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. I'd be happy to try to answer them as best I can. I'd like to think, and frankly, I grew up in an area outside Rome, Georgia, that is very similar to what I drove through today in North Athens. And I can appreciate very much the concerns and the questions about why you would not want to have any change to that area. But you also have to have utility service in that area, and that includes wireless service. And so I hope that on balance, that the concessions that we have made, the additional landscaping, et cetera, is something that on balance would allow you to support this. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all might have. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I want to go ahead and recognize Commissioner Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Gertz. My question was for Mr. Palmer. Before you leave the chamber, when you talked about the 11 times greater coverage that this tower would give, is that in like square feet or square miles? Is that a geographical term?
Frankly, I don't know the answer to that. I know it's an engineering term, and there was a lot of engineering data that was provided in conjunction with the application, and so that was the information that I was provided.
Okay, I'll move to my next question. We'll see how this goes. And you said that 3 times more residents would be getting coverage. Is that in what county?
Well, primarily in Clarke County. Yes, there will be a little bit of bleed over into, and I'm not sure what the county is to the north, but it would primarily be Clarke County. I can assure you that this is not something where Verizon is, again, if they could move it a mile and co-locate, or 1.3 miles and they would. But so this is not a desire for Clarke County to provide service, or the baseline for service to improve coverage in the adjoining county. This is primarily going to be serving Clarke County, Athens-Clarke County.
Okay, thank you. And so then when you say 3 times more residents, you're talking about actual existing dwellings increasing. That one's not geography. That one is on.
I believe you're correct.
Actual residential opportunity.
I believe that is accurate, yes.
Thanks for helping me with that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner, and thanks, Mr. Palmer.
Mr. Palmer.
Commissioner Thornton, question for Mr. Palmer.
Commissioner Wright brought up a very interesting piece, and I'm even more concerned that you weren't could not be definite in your response, because where that tower is located, it does cross the Madison line. It's much closer to the Madison line than it is the downtown, in Athens. So you are absolutely sure this is not a benefit to Madison County? Is that what you're saying, that you're really sure that 3 times of the people that will be benefit this? Are you saying that you are absolutely sure that it is not counting the Madison County? Madison County. Is that what you're saying?
No, and in fact, it's important. I appreciate if I confuse people with my answer, I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that. Yes, there will be benefit in Madison County, but the primary benefit is going to be in Athens-Clarke County. And again, the way these cellular networks work, they kind of, and this, they ignore imaginary lines in the ground. So it doesn't, so when you're looking at the electrical engineering that goes into, and the radio frequency engineering that goes into dictating where towers need to be, they don't, they ignore city and county boundaries. And so it happens that this one is inside Athens-Clarke County. I wouldn't deny that there's going to be a benefit in is it Winder County or Barrow County? I'm not sure what's north, but the adjoining county. But the primary benefit is going to be to residents of Athens-Clarke County. There is absolutely no doubt about that.
I want to go ahead and recognize Commissioner Neesmith, who hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, I just want. You hear me okay?
Speak up just a little bit.
Attorney said, he mentioned someone going to McDonald's to get Wi-Fi. This tower has absolutely nothing to do with that. The other thing that the other thing he talked about was the need for broadband. This tower has absolutely nothing to do with that. It does not increase either one of those availabilities. So let's just, let's don't talk about that anymore. It's irrelevant. And third, I'm just really disappointed that you guys are not prepared to convince us of what the benefit of this tower is to our county.
Well, if I may respond,
right ahead,
Commissioner. I said there's a need for broadband and wireless, because if that young lady, if the student had sufficient wireless capacity, because you can get access from either wireless or broadband. If she had access to wireless capacity, she wouldn't have needed to drive to the McDonald's to get on the Wi-Fi system.
Only if she put up a hotspot, which not many people know how to do, and that also costs data dollars.
Most people these days are able to use their wireless network to download things. And I'm sure, again, Commissioner Neesmith, I may never convince you. I may never convince you, but I can assure you that the reason that Verizon Wireless is not out trying to identify a neighborhood to create a problem. They are trying to serve a hole in their system and provide service to the residents of this area and people who are driving through this area. And that's what Congress provided for in the 1996 Federal Telecommunications Act, was if there is a hole in the system, and again, your planning department recommended approval, the planning commission recommended approval, we meet the requirements of your ordinance. And I recognize and appreciate fully that when you have a room full of constituents, either before you or having provided the comments that were read into the record tonight, I can understand the desire to respond to that. But this is a utility service the same way that having Georgia Power run its power lines down the road are. I mean, people rely upon this service, and we would like to meet that need in a way that balances everyone's concerns and considerations. And but I certainly respect the views of everyone who's concerned about what we're proposing here.
Here's the problem, the main problem I'm having. Now, I'm an old salesman. I used to sell technology. When I was selling something, I would first ask the customer or the prospect, what's the problem? What can I solve? You guys have not showed us any benefit to this county for the location of that tower there. You haven't showed us diagrams. You haven't shown us coverages. You haven't done anything. You've pretty much said, we need it. Federal government says if we need it, we got to have it. There it is. And you don't need to respond.
Well, I believe that information's in the record, with all due respect. The engineering studies are in there. I believe that you've had the opportunity to engage an engineer yourself to review the information and determine whether or not there's a need for the tower. Again, Verizon would not just on its own whim decide they want to spend $1 million to put a tower where it's not needed.
Verizon thinks it's needed.
But they haven't tried to convince us that we need it. That's all.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I don't believe my question's really been answered. Mr. Palmer responded by telling me why the new tower was needed, with, you know, an explanation of the 3 times the coverage, but he didn't explain why it was impossible to co-locate on that nearby tower. I still haven't gotten a clear answer to that.
If we were to go on that other tower, we would, on the existing tower, we would have to build yet another tower because there'd still be a hole in the system. In other words, if you, and y'all can't see me at all, and I realize even if I wave my hands in the air, it won't be effective. But I mean, just imagine this, that if you were trying to fill,
we see you,
fill a hole in a circle, and you put your pin, in this case the tower, on the outer edge of the circle, or maybe not even in the circle, you're going to have to build another tower or put your pin then on the other side in order to fill that gap, because there will still be a gap, a large gap in the network or in the system if Verizon were to co-locate on the existing tower. I can't overemphasize this enough. They would want to co-locate on an existing tower. They do it all the time. They would do it here, but for the fact that if they did it, they'd still have to build another tower. So I hope I'm explaining myself better than I did before, and I apologize for being unclear before. But I think, again, that existing tower is outside the search ring for the area that Verizon is trying to fill.
And I have a question about the 3 times the number of residents. You talked about 11 times the area coverage, I believe, and 3 times the residents. Are those existing residents or potential residents? Is that a potential for capacity to carry people with cell phones that don't yet live in that area?
No, my understanding of that information is that it's existing. It's not a projected density of any sort.
Yet there aren't complaints about lack service in the area, from what I understand, or at least no one has come forward to us with any concerns about a lack of service in that area.
I've been doing this a while. I've never heard people come to a zoning hearing and complain about a lack of cellular service. It's a lot easier to come and object to a tower than to come and say, you know what, we really need this tower out here. You know, it doesn't surprise me that you would be hearing, that you wouldn't have heard somebody say, we really need cell service. Having said that, I believe that there's information in the record to the effect of 1 or 2 people talking about how having additional cell service would be good, but they would prefer not to have it here.
I see Commissioner Davenport with his hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and recognize you.
This is thank all the commissioners for their comments, and this question is for Attorney Drake. According to the Federal Communication Act of 1996, which prevents local government from stopping preventing federal communication towers to be built. What will happen if what will be the next steps if the commissioners decide to deny this?
Thank you, Commissioner Davenport. If the commission denies this application again tonight related to approving the settlement litigation, will just continue on its course. The current pending litigation that's already been filed by Verizon will continue, and ultimately a federal judge will decide the issue.
But basically, according to the Federal Communication Act of 1996, our hands are tied, correct?
I think that it will be challenging for us to be successful under the terms of Telecommunications Act. We obviously will make the best arguments we possibly can based upon the record that is currently before, based upon the record that will be before the court.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thornton, did you want to follow up?
Kind of like probably thought that I probably need to be quiet at this point. Mr. Palmer, I appreciate your time and I know you probably did not expect it to be this challenging meeting with us tonight, but we are a commission that cares about all of our communities. And I personally think that if you were talking about broadband, I might have a difference of opinion. It's not clear about the 3%. It's just so many things that if I had, first I was moved by my constituents, but now with your answering of questions has made my doubt even more. I'm going to leave this to everybody on this commission to vote how they feel, but again, personally, I'm not feeling good about this and I will not be supporting it.
Want to recognize Commissioner Wright?
Thank you. I think I'm going to put a motion up that we, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but I think I want clear answers to the 11 times greater coverage that might be deeper in the material that we had when we previously studied this, as well as the 3 times more residents, if you can clarify that. And might we move this to our voting agenda instead of it being a special session here today on the agenda meeting, and let us have that material? Mayor Gertz, can you explain to me if that would be a feasible solution right now?
So what you're asking is to kind of hold this until
Put this
our
on
regularly
hold.
scheduled voting meeting in May?
Because those 2 specific answers, I think all of us could use some more details to go with that, and then have it on the agenda for our May voting, which is what the agenda setting's for.
Attorney Drake, could I just ask you if that motion would be in order given the circumstances we're in, or provide any perspective that you could on this item?
Well, the zoning procedures law requires 14 days notice of publication in the paper and a sign to be posted. And as I'm looking at the calendar, we'd have had to get that done today. So I think we would be able to do it at the May 5th meeting. In other words, we have to provide 14 days notice under the ZPL, which we follow with this. That's post a sign, that's how citizens were alerted to this. And also we are required by law to notice in the paper. And also I cannot speak on behalf of Verizon on whether they would agree with that. I'm not able to speak on their behalf.
So at least under the public notice component of the conversation, we would have to, any tabling of this would have to occur until at least the May agenda setting meeting to provide that sufficient 14-day notice. So we have assurance on that.
because of the topic that this is, it has to have a 14 days notification of when we're going to talk about it again.
Correct.
Okay, and I guess I would learn from whoever can fill in if Verizon would allow us this extra time to for them to present those details that we were curious about, if that would work for them.
So, Mr.
Yes.
Palmer, would the third Tuesday in May be sufficient time to provide that additional information?
Yes, that would be more than sufficient time, and we were happy to do that. Frankly, I'm kicking myself in the rear for not having better information about those details today or tonight for you. But yes, we can provide that information in plenty of time. I would expect that we should probably be able to provide it by the end of this week, but I realize the 14-day notice period. But yes, we can do that.
So I make a motion that we move this agenda item to the May 19th meeting, and that so that we can get the additional information that wasn't clear today.
I second it. I'll second it. I'll second it.
I want to make a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Neesmith.
The attorney, explaining to the public about how much better the coverage is going to be because you have an engineer's report in your hand is not possible. We need pretty pictures. So I would suggest that instead of an engineer, you get a graphic artist to help us understand what this tower is going to do. And perhaps you can also explain in the same way why co-locating won't work. That's just a suggestion.
I appreciate those suggestions. Thank you, Commissioner.
Given that there's a motion from Commissioner Wright and a second from Commissioner Thornton, before I call for a vote, I do want to see, since we have Mr. Palmer here, is there any other information that we would like to get from his client?
I have a question for Mr. Palmer.
Go ahead.
Mr. Palmer, are you open or available for any suggestions other than doing the cohabiting thing with the other tower? Are you interested in any other suggestions that might be a win-win for everybody?
We are always interested in win-wins. So yes, certainly feel free to reach out. And I'm not sure how y'all want to do that since we're in litigation. But if you wanted to suggest something to Attorney Drake, he could pass it along to me, or whatever you thought was the most effective way to provide additional information for things that we should consider. We'd be happy to consider to look at that. So thank you.
I would, and I appreciate you saying that, because I usually try to be very transparent, and I know a lot of things we can't discuss because of executive sessions and property. I get that part. I do think that I know that the North Athens folk want to do what's best for North Athens, and would appreciate just having the opportunity of that dialogue. So I'm not trying to lock you into anything. I'm not trying to force you into anything, but just having that door open of communication, which I had requested early on. And we might have had some of these questions resolved today, but thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I can ask one more question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Benson, and then I'll get Commissioner Link.
Okay, and just like if we're going to be requesting some more data, I would love for us to be able to see what the impact on potential coverage would be if we were lowering the antenna further. Say at 100 feet, what would be the impact of coverage there, and if that's possible?
Thanks, Commissioner. Go ahead, Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. I would like to see some evidence of citizens in that area who are having problems with coverage, who have complained about problems with coverage. I'm also curious to know if a co-location with that nearby tower and an alternative location for a new tower might fill that gap in coverage that Verizon claims is out there. There might be a more appropriate location for a tower this current location is in a very rural area, and obviously the nearby residents value that rural aesthetic. And I do wonder if there are some other areas in Athens that are more appropriate, more industrial, more urban, but in the nearby area that would not have so much objection from the nearby residents.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Commissioner Edwards.
I see that we have a modified settlement proposal that has these willow oaks to be planted that reach a mature height over 100 feet. Assuming that this tower maybe one day does get built, I know that some communities have guidelines requiring towers to be constructed in a more camouflaged manner. Specifically in Peachtree City, cell phone towers appear like evergreen trees. And if this tower was constructed maybe 50 feet higher than an oak forest and it was made to look like an evergreen tree, it seems like it might be the most unobtrusive means to accomplish the tower's goals in this situation. So could Attorney Palmer comment on that, please?
That's a possibility of doing something like that. At 160 feet, we'll provide some pictures to let you look at that. Sometimes, and what we've seen is that doing what's called a monopine is what you're referring to. Sometimes it draws more attention to it, but here, if it's going to be surrounded by trees that we're actually going to plant ourselves, plus some existing ones, it may work. Why don't we'll bring that back? We'll look at that and provide some information on that as well.
Thank you. I find, especially in rural areas and wooded areas, it's my experience that the well camouflaged towers tend to blend in much more easily than the steel phallus. So thank you for looking into that.
Thank you for making that point, Commissioner Edwards. I'm going
not sure how to
move on
respond.
to Commissioner Wright.
I just had my motion on the floor. I'm sorry if my hand's still up. I'll take it
Okay.
down. Lower.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I've got my motion on the floor.
All right. So
And
there's a
second.
motion and a second. Motion from Commissioner Wright, second from Commissioner Thornton, that we're going to move this item to the May 19th meeting. And I believe Attorney Palmer has a set of questions to take back to his client. We go ahead and ask all in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so this item moves to May 19th. All right, everyone, moving on to the next order of business on our special called session agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney. I appreciate it. We've got a proposal from the Classic Center Authority. They've worked with their lender, given that there are favorable loan terms available right now, to consolidate some existing debt and refinance. I think the agenda report notes that this is going to lower their monthly debt, which obviously is very significant to them right now, given the favorability of terms that are available here. Are there any questions about this item? Commissioner Edwards?
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Any other input on this? All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Edwards, second from Commissioner Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, moving on to the third item of business. This is a resolution to create a joint development authority with the City of Winterville. And I think we've had many discussions about this, and I want to let the public know that what this is a new local government authority. And in Georgia, a public authority is a vehicle through which some things that can be done that a city or county can't do on their own as a municipality or a local government. And among the things that are of immediate concern that this local authority that the City of Winterville is favorable toward would be to provide some low interest loans to businesses. And we know that many businesses have had difficulty getting loans through the federal government program that I've just read kind of in the minutes prior to this meeting will be expanded. But we know that was a challenging set of circumstances to apply for those. And we want to create a local situation that's just easier to apply to. I've had conversations with Mayor Farrell in Winterville. He also believes, as I do, that there probably will be some joint opportunities that we as two local governments have down the road that this will avail ourselves to as well. I want to go ahead and just see if there are any questions about this. Attorney Drake has been critical in being able to assemble this. This does not create the loan framework itself, but just creates the vehicle. And we anticipate probably in the next couple of days, with the support of our Economic Development Department, there will be delivered to members of the commission a draft loan program that then we'll be able to deploy. So see Commissioner Neesmith.
Mr. We haven't seen any written.
Commissioner Neesmith, you're very faint. I can barely hear you.
Haven't any item other than title only. So I have a good, difficult time understanding how we can vote for it.
Attorney Drake, can you go ahead and outline this for me?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it was actually sent. I know it was after 4 o'clock, and I do apologize for the late time of getting it out. We had the clerk send it out, full body of the resolution. But I apologize for that. It was necessary that the City of Winterville basically sign off and agree. I will say that David Ellison, their attorney, sees no problem with the resolution. However, he was not able to get in contact with all the members of the City of Winterville Commission that he expects their approval. But I will go over
It came into my mailbox at 5:38.
That's very late. So I did the best I could.
I just now found it. I understand.
Yeah. But I will go over let me pull it up and I can talk to you about the major provisions of it. And say as far as process, well, let me go with the provisions, then we'll talk about process and what the mayor was talking about as far as the revolving loan. This resolution is being created under authority of OCGA section 36-62-5.1, which authorizes one or more counties and one or more municipalities by concurrent resolutions that of their respective local governing bodies to create and activate a joint development authority. And this joint resolution is presented for adoption by the Commission, Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and the Mayor and Council of the City of Winterville, and shall become effective when adopted by each of such governing bodies. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in the creation of the Joint Development Authority, Section 1, it is hereby declared there is a need for a Joint Development Authority to function in the unincorporated and incorporated areas of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and the City of Winterville, which are herein called participating jurisdictions, pursuant to the provisions of OCGA Section 36-62-5.1. Such Joint Development Authority is hereby created and activated. Such Joint Development Authority shall be known as the Joint Development Authority of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and the Center of Winterville. The authority shall transact business pursuant to and exercise the powers provided by the provisions of the Development Authority's law, codified in the Official Code of Georgia, annotated Title 36, Chapter 62, as the same now exists, and as it may be hereafter amended. Section 2, members. The number of members of the authority shall consist of 7 members. 4 members shall be appointed by the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia. 3 members shall be appointed by the City of Winterville. The members shall initially be appointed by the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia. The members initially appointed by the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, shall be appointed for a term expiring on April 30th, 2024. The members initially appointed by the City of Winterville shall be appointed for a term expiring on April 30th, 2024. Thereafter, their successors shall be appointed for terms of 4 years. The foregoing notwithstanding, the term of any member appointed by any participating jurisdiction who at the time of appointment was a member of the governing authority of such appointing participating jurisdiction shall end when such member is no longer a member of the governing authority of such participating jurisdiction. If at the end of the term of any member of the authority, a successor to such member has not been appointed, the member whose term of office has expired shall continue to hold office until his or her successor is appointed, which appointment shall be for the balance of the term being filled. The residency requirements for the members of the authority are that each member must be a taxpayer residing in the participating jurisdiction that appointed such member. The members of the authority shall constitute its board of directors. Officers, Section 3, the directors shall elect officers in accordance with the Development Authority's law. Section 4, filing with the Secretary of State. A copy of this resolution shall be filed with the Secretary of State of Georgia. Section 5, counterparts. This resolution may be executed by the participating jurisdictions in multiple counterparts, but the same shall be considered one document. Section 6, effective date. This resolution shall become effective on the date of its adoption by the last of the governing bodies of the participating jurisdictions to adopt the same. That is the totality of the document. I will add that when the members of the Development Authority are appointed and a quorum is able to meet, at that time, the Joint Development Authority would adopt bylaws which would further govern the terms of how it wants to conduct its business is the standard practice. Those bylaws that would be subject to approval of the governing authority of the Joint Development Authority itself. In addition, as far as the terms of the money that this mayor and commission of Unified Code of Athens-Clarke County is willing to provide for the creation of this revolving loan fund and the terms related to thereto, there will be an intergovernmental agreement that will have to be approved between the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and the Joint Development Authority, which spells out the amount of funds being provided and the conditions of receiving those funds. And that intergovernmental agreement will be subject to the approval of both the mayor and commission of the Unified Government and the mayor and the Joint Development Authority. That is kind of an overview of. So the legislation tonight is not extensive. OCGA 36 section OCGA section 36-62-5.1, which is the Development Authority's law, has a great deal more codified law under the Georgia Code, which will apply to the operation of this entity. But this is what is necessary to begin the process of creating this new tool, not only for the revolving loan program, but a possible use for future endeavors of both the Unified Government and the City of Winterville. That's basically a good summary.
Thanks, Attorney Drake. All right, other questions?
I have a question.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that we're creating this tool and to hopefully help some of our small businesses out who are really in some desperate measures these days. And I understand that, almost as soon as the COVID crisis hit and we had our shutdown, the Athens Downtown Development Authority was able to start offering grants to downtown businesses. Is that correct? Were those grants or loans?
I believe they were creating grants.
That's what I thought. So this, and those could only be offered to those businesses within the downtown jurisdiction that were under that Downtown Development Authority. So this authority would cover all of Athens-Clarke County and Winterville. So businesses in all of Athens or Winterville would be able to apply for any benefits that we might be able to offer through this authority, correct?
Yes, Commissioner,
Hello?
that's correct.
You hear me?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct.
Did y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes, that
is that correct? Okay. I have another question. Once upon a time we had, are you there? I think there might be a little delay. Once upon a time we had an economic development foundation instead of an economic development department. If that entity were still in existence, would we have been able to use that to offer grants or loans in this situation? I'm just curious.
Commissioner Link, I'm not familiar with that foundation. I can say that, so I'm not able. I apologize. I'm not able to speak to that. I'm not.
Well, I'm glad to see this framework being set up. I think it's good to have this kind of entity waiting in the wings to address this situation and other possible situations, economic situations or development interests that we might have that go beyond, downtown.
Commissioner Hamby?
Thank you, Mayor. You answered my question earlier when you mentioned about the Economic Development Department taking a few days to come up with some frameworks around this. So thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Commissioner Thornton?
I'm going to support this because of the urgency. And I'm sorry, my dog is barking. Let me shut the door. My concern, just like ADD did the grants where people did not have to pay back, I would have liked to see this to be a grant program instead of a loan program. No matter how long it takes for these businesses to recover, having additional debt or a clause where they, maybe a clause where they don't have to feel forced to pay it back. I would have liked to see something like that. I think it's really, I think it's a real hardship when you give somebody a loan when they're in their worst need, and we know it's going to take them. We know it's going to take them a while before they get their feet back on the ground. If we have this money, and it's part of that was taken from the prosperity package money, I don't understand why we are making this a loan issue. We need to give people something for and they should not have to worry about this, but I'm going to support this because of the urgency, but I don't think that we could do better.
Attorney Drake, just as we prepare for the prospect of operationalizing this authority, could you also deliver to us, not tonight, but kind of via email, some additional guidance about how the Downtown Development Authority, which operates with a separate mill for those property owners in that district, differs from a general joint development authority that applies to the entire jurisdiction, just so that we can understand how those things may vary in utility?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'll be happy to do that.
That'd be very helpful. I appreciate it. I see Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I am excited to see this move forward. There's a dire need for it, as you spoke to. The federal relief and loan programs have been insufficient and honestly distributed in a very inequitable fashion. And we have a lot of local businesses that are fantastic businesses run by fantastic people who need support. And I feel like this is a novel way for us to step up and be able to do that. And I greatly appreciate the work of Attorney Drake and his office, and also Attorney Dan McCray on the research for this, and of course Mayor Farrell and the City of Winterville. And just to clarify that the reason we can't be doing the grants in this situation, such as the ADDA did, is because of the gratuities clause that the county government, we can't, unfortunately, cannot give anything outright. What they'll be viewed as a gratuity. I would love to see the state government address that and find some ways to be more flexible with that, so that local governments can step up and help our constituents and our businesses here in a more direct manner. But what we can do, from my understanding of reading through the way this is going to work, is that we can have those loans be 0% interest loans. And I think that is I agree with Commissioner Thornton saying that we need to be working this money that we're using is taxpayer dollars. It's money that came from some of these businesses. And I would love for us to be able to issue these loans in a 0% interest manner. And I think that will get us as close as we can to not putting those businesses, as Commissioner Thornton said, into a difficult way to pay back a large loan whenever they're already under so much economic duress. I did have one other question, which I guess it's already been talked about a little bit, which would be the timeline of us doing that. And I appreciate knowing that we're going to have a draft in a couple of days. But I would love to see more of that information come out to us of the timeline of when we could actually expect a call for people to apply, even a far out, like just an expected date of distribution, even just so we know what kind of timeline we're working with whenever we're communicating with. But with that, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and pass this.
I'll second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Denson, a second from Commissioner Link, and I've got a couple more commission questions. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Wright and then back to Commissioner Neesmith.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad this is moving forward, but I did have a question. First of all, I think the name is really long, and can we just go with calling it the Joint Authority from here on out, just to simplify that? I think that would be good. And then I take it that it's elected officials that are the representatives. Am I right on that, Kelly? 4 from Athens and 4 from Winterville, 3 from Winterville?
It's 2 elected officials from Athens-Clarke County, the mayor of Winterville, and then some residents as well as selected by the governing bodies, which is you guys for our part, and then the Mayorville Council or the Winterville Council for theirs.
So for the 4 members appointed by the unified by us, you said 2 of it would be commissioners, or is one of those you and
2 elected? So myself, 1 commissioner, and then 2 residents.
Mr. Mayor, I can speak to that issue.
Go right ahead, Attorney.
I think under the Joint Development Authorities law, there can only be 1 member of each local governing authority. So
I apologize. I had the numbers off.
Clarification that we received from Dan McRae. So there would, it could be the mayor or a member of this commission. It could be the mayor of Winterville or a member of their council. And then each jurisdiction will have, the Athens-Clarke County will have, this mayor commission will have 3 other appointments of residents who are taxpayers of the unified government. And then Winterville will have their governing authority member and then 2 other appointments. So we'll have a total of 4, and then the Winterville will have 3.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that I believe we've put our boards, authorities, and commission cycle on hold due to the pandemic and those restrictions. But I hope that we can move as fast as possible with getting the group of people we need for this joint authority to move forward and get everything that they need done. And Kelly, if you'll just be sure and let us know what we can do to help formulate our part of that. But I think this is great. This is the kind of thing that I think special session voting meetings are all about, when we have something that is really important for the community that we want to not wait any longer on. So thanks for getting it to this point. I do understand that, and I appreciate Winterville moving it forward, even though they're still, do we know the date that they're going to be voting on this?
Attorney Drake, is that first Monday in May? Is that correct?
I believe Mr. Ellison, when they meet, he just indicated they meet the first week of May. I didn't get an exact date.
Well, if there's anything we could do to get them to move this ahead faster, I think that would be really worth it for all of our community if we can get them to do that. I'm going to support it, but I really think that this can't move fast enough. So whatever we can do to get it moving fast, I appreciate it.
I agree. Everybody be anticipating some virtual interviews for candidates in the very near future. I'm going to move back to Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, I agree and appreciate the questions that have come up, but I do agree. First week in May, that could be as long as 2 weeks from now. We're not in a wait 2 week kind of a period here. I know that businesses in my area, the ones I communicate with, are all very anxious to see what we can do for them and when we can do it. So I'd like to see it move along. I would like to ask one thing. What is a taxpayer as opposed to a resident?
Attorney Drake, could you distinguish?
Well, a resident, it would be a resident who also pays taxes. So, that was the language that Attorney Dan McRae recommended. I could check with him to see if he could if that's a requirement of the Development Authority law for the.
Yeah, do that, because if you're a resident, you're probably buying something in the store and you're paying taxes. I find it to be just a little. Thank you.
I'm going to move on to Commissioner Thornton.
Like I said earlier, I'm going to support this because of the urgency for our small businesses. I just want to go on record that I think that when we put this committee together, that we should reach out to the Northeast Georgia Business Alliance. They are already working with small businesses. They're doing trainings with small businesses. They have a list of those businesses that traditionally we don't. And those are those businesses that are usually left out. And we're talking about the barbers and the beauticians, and we're talking about the folk that are doing landscaping. The Northeast Georgia Business Alliance has been offering to work with us and the local government forever, and they should be considered when we figure out who those community folk are on this committee, because they have their hand on the pulse.
Thanks, Commissioner. I think it's important that we reach out to their partners and their constituency for exactly the reasons you mentioned. We want to make sure that everybody's knowledgeable about the programs that are offered through this conduit. Anybody have a follow-up question? All right, we've got a motion on the floor from Commissioner Link, a second from Commissioner Denson. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on. Attorney Drake, could you discuss the extension of local emergency, the next item on our special called session agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First, I'll read the heading for the ordinance. An ordinance for the third declaration of local state of emergency related to COVID-19 and for other purposes. This ordinance is necessary for the purpose of providing the manager with the additional emergency powers that he has under our emergency declarations ordinance, the code, and also clarifying that he continues to have the authority to waive procedures and fee structures, and allows for the continued activation of our emergency operations plan. This is being done primarily because a condition of receiving some of the federal funds that will be available as part of the national declaration, the state's declaration. Many times require a local emergency declaration, so we want to make sure we continue ours and we're eligible for those funds. I would add that this declaration does not cover anything related to shelter in place, because the governor has preempted local governments from acting in that regard. So, but this is necessary, and is more of a housekeeping matter to keep us in good stead forward, with the ability to gain, primarily to have flexibility to do the things we need to do. Like you'll see, it does reference that the things we've already done, this commission has done regarding tax, payment of occupation tax and regulatory fees, as well as the growler action that was taken in the mining and takeout consumption of premises. We put that in there too, just to restate it again. But this is a housekeeping matter as much as anything, but also a necessary matter, so we're in the best position to respond to the emergency.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. Any questions about that for the attorney or for the manager for that matter? All right, entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, a second from Commissioner Edwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, thank you all so very much. Final item tonight, item number 5 on our special called session, is a resolution that effectively recommends to the public, because as Attorney Drake mentioned, we are now preempted by state action, but recommends to the public continued shelter-in-place activity and highlights some of the work that we have done locally to support our community. Would anybody like to speak to this? I know several commissioners worked together to assemble this document. Commissioner Edwards?
Thank you, sir. This resolution is a a recommendation that Athens residents continue with the shelter-in-place directives that we had previously issued. Medical experts, epidemiologists, emergency room staff that recommended our initial adoption of shelter-in-place have echoed their recommendation that we continue sheltering in spite of the governor's move to reopen bowling alleys and tattoo parlors this Friday. We're still deeply concerned, following the expert opinion, that testing has been substandard in the Northeast Georgia area. Contact tracing has been substandard, and we still need more robust treatment, and we should shelter in place to prevent overwhelming our medical facilities. We aren't out of the woods yet. And so this document is simply a recommendation that shelter in place continue, along with an explicit recommendation that citizens wear face masks, facial coverings when they're out in public to help hinder the spread of the virus. There's a few highlights. If you look at paragraph 5, it highlights the fact that we're participating in the creation of the Joint Development Authority that we just voted on for the purposes of creating a mechanism to provide loans to local small businesses. Commissioner Thornton has offered up another amendment simply to highlight that last week we also made an emergency $150,000 appropriation to provide care to the indigent throughout this pandemic crisis. I think this is a very important document. The governor issued guidance yesterday. I think it's important for the Athens-Clarke County Commission to echo the expert opinions that have molded our response up to this point, and continue to provide good guidance to our citizens so that they can act in the most responsible manner possible. We can speak with one voice and provide that encouragement. Of course, we can't preempt the governor, unfortunately, at this time. We don't have that authority. Albany doesn't have that authority. Savannah doesn't have that authority. So this is simply a recommended action for guidance for our citizens. And I'd like to thank the mayor's support for putting this on the agenda. I do consider this to be an emergency action, since the governor did act to open up the tattoo parlors this Friday. So I appreciate the support of my colleagues to act swiftly to respond to this crisis, to provide guidance to our citizens. I'd like to thank Commissioner Denson for helping me draft this, along with Commissioners Thornton, Commissioners Hamby, and all the other commissioners who I've been able to speak with today, who've helped guide the drafting of this document and ushering this to the public. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate everybody's work on this very much. I've got Commissioner Neesmith up next on tap.
Yeah, I fully support this, except for one thing. The word should appears 21 times in the document, and it's a little confusing. I think Commissioner Harrod pointed this out too. I'd like to move for adoption of this with one change, and that is the word should is changed to are strongly encouraged to. And that's what this is. It's an encouragement. I think we need to make sure people understand that that's what it is. It's an encouragement. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Any other commission input on this item?
I just want to say that we were, maybe it was just me battling over this document. There is an emergency to remind people that we highly encourage them to continue sheltering in. I have been a strong proponent of, if we do resolutions, that we have some teeth into that. We have some skin in the game. And I think that the $150,000 last week for the indigent, and moving forward on the loans, which I wish were grants. We are showing that we as the local government are in this with you. We're not just asking you to, struggle by yourself. We're doing the best we can to support you in the struggle because we're all struggling together. So I fully support this. If you want to change the terminology or the wording as suggested by my colleague, Commissioner Neesmith, I have no problem with that. I do want to put my full support behind this resolution, which I don't normally do, because it's important.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Got Commissioner Link next.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody who helped draft this resolution. I think it's extremely important. Regardless of the fact of this, and the governor's orders override our own shelter-in-place orders. I think we're in a moment in history, and this will be a historical document. And, history will not be kind to certain players through this crisis, but I feel very strongly that history will be kind to Athens, Georgia. We did the right thing. We have saved lives in acting early in this pandemic, and we are doing whatever we can to help folks who are hurting through the crisis. And so I do think it's really important that this is a full resolution that's as complete as possible, fully explaining the situation we're in, what our own intentions are, and what we are doing as a local government in this time in history.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Gertz. I too am happy that this is coming forward. Again, time is of the essence. I'm glad that we're repeating the hard work that we did ahead of the curve, so to speak, March 19th, and that we're repeating that, as well as capturing the vote that we just did earlier on the Joint Development Authority. And I do think that the more we listen to the medical professionals and we follow science and let our constituents and people in our community know that this is what we think is best for our community, is the best way to go. I've heard of some restaurants that have already announced that they're going to continue to do curbside and pick up only to go on Monday when there are other options that have been opened up at the state level. So let's continue to support the businesses that are helping us all get through this in a safe way to the other side where the air is a little bit cleaner and clearer. So I support this, and thanks for everybody who got the work done to getting this on here today.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I'm going to move forward to Commissioner Herod.
Thank you. I'm also, as I said in an email earlier today to you all, I do think it's very important that we do go on the record and state that we believe that what's best for our community here is to continue social distancing and to continue with the stay in place. And I don't have any issues with the intent of the resolution. My only concern is that I think that it's too long. I think it's in some ways too complicated, and I'm concerned that it may lead to some confusion on the part of individuals where the governor's order says one thing and we seem to be suggesting that people, as Commissioner Neesmith mentioned, should do other things. My own preference is that we would wait on this for 24 hours and really get the language correct. If it's the will of my colleagues to approve it tonight, I'm fine with that. But as I've long said, I'm a big believer in measure twice and cut once. And I think that the way that this document is put together presently has the potential to cause some confusion. I would rather have the document than not have the document, so I want to make that very clear. But given that what the governor has said doesn't kick in until Friday, I'd rather, they say decide in haste and repent at leisure, and I don't want to put a document out there that is confusing to the public. And so I'm just kind of, as a rhetorical question, wondering if there is some wisdom in maybe working on it over the next 24 hours, and then maybe having a special called 10-minute meeting on Thursday to approve a more precisely drafted document. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other input?
Kelly?
Got Commissioner. I haven't heard from Commissioner Denson. Then I'll get back around to folks.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do agree with Commissioner Harrod that especially if this wasn't ordering, definitely the importance of having to measure twice and cut once. And I wish that our state government would take the same advice. But I do think it's important for us to go ahead and act now. And with this resolution, and especially, I have no problem with us changing the wording to strongly encourage. If my colleagues think that makes it more clear, that would be fine. But I think it is very important that we go ahead and step up, and because people should continue to shelter in place. And that's not just this body, this commission saying this. That is the health experts across the world, and plus here in our own community, saying that they should do this. As I was working on this this afternoon, I visited the whitehouse.gov website on removing the shelter in places, and they have a list of criteria that all states, the proposed state criteria to be satisfied before proceeding to a phased comeback. These things contain downward trajectory of influenza-like illnesses reported within a 14-day period. That has not happened. A downward trajectory of COVID-like syndromic cases within a 14-day period hasn't happened. Having a robust testing program in place for at-risk healthcare workers, including emergency antibody testing. These things, we have not met any of these criteria in the state of Georgia. And it is dangerous for us to be moving forward on the path that our governor has placed us on. And I think it's very important for us and necessary for us to responsibly tell our constituents that, that's not the case. We need to present the other side of this case and the medical facts that are going to keep people safe in our community. And that is, and I am so thankful to the businesses who have already come out, as Commissioner Wright mentioned, who have said that they're going to continue sheltering in place because they're putting the health and safety of their employees and also customers first and foremost. But I am honestly, it's very, very, very discouraging as I was going through looking at the ordinance that we passed about a month ago when we put the shelter in place, and I was going through checking the numbers that have happened, and I was having to change the number of, I think it was like 114 cases in Georgia. I had to change that number to 19,398 confirmed cases in Georgia in a month. And so I think it's very important that we raise a flag that says we are not over this yet. We are very much in a dangerous situation, and we need to have our constituents and the people in surrounding counties, and actually almost like set up a flag across the state of Georgia, letting people know that we need to continue the practice of sheltering in place. We need to be wearing masks. We need to be doing these things. And I use the verbiage should, but if it's the will of the rest of my colleagues here to go ahead and change that wording to strongly urge or strongly encourage, I'm fine with that.
Moving on to Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Thornton, got your hand up?
I'm here. The wording is not a crucial issue with me at all. We as this commission is showing our support to our community. If since we got this late, and I worked, and bless Commissioner Edwards' heart, because I was sending him stuff late. If it is the will of the body, I think our passion and our rationale is very clear tonight, and voting on this tomorrow after everybody gets to see it and read it in this detail, I have no problem with it. It doesn't change anything at all. It doesn't change the urgency. It doesn't change where we stand in spite of what the state is doing. I want all of us to be comfortable with this as we move forward. So I have no problem. I think that Commissioner Edwards did an excellent job taking everybody's input at the last minute. I'm not expecting any changes, but I'm good with having a 10-minute meeting tomorrow just to vote on this. This will go public. Everybody will see it. We're not anticipating any more changes. So I just think that we need to get in a practice of, even in emergencies, that we respond in a proactive way and not in a reactive way. So I will leave this to everybody else, but I have no problem with Commissioner Harrod's request.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Harrod, I see your hand up. Did you want to continue conversation?
Sorry, that was because I forgot to take my hand down. But just to reiterate, as I said, I don't have any problem with the intent here. I just, the very last version of this came through at 5:09. If we're going to do something that I do think will make a statement, I just want us to make sure that we get the language correct and we don't leave our residents confused. As Commissioner Edwards, I think it was, said, we don't have a lot of local options now because of what the governor's order basically says. Local governments cannot do anything that is stronger than what his executive order allows us to do. So, that's very clear. And I'm just thinking about how can we, to the best of our abilities, encourage people to continue to do what they've been doing recently without getting sideways with what's coming to us from Atlanta. I'll just notice, I think what we have been doing here locally has been very, very important. If you look at our rate of COVID reported infections per 100,000 people, it's less than half the rate of the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia is now 186.2 per 100,000 people. We're at 89.5 per 100,000 people. We are lower per 100,000 people than Oconee, Barrow, and Oglethorpe by a long stretch, and we're very, very similar to what's going on in the rate in Jackson. So I think what we've done has been extremely successful. I think we have saved lives here. I just want this to be as clear as it can be, because clarity is important in getting people to understand why we would be encouraging them to continue doing what's been done.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Link and then Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly clear that the governor's announcement yesterday was somewhat reckless. Reporting in the AJC today, interviewed members of his own task force who weren't even aware that he was going to do what he did. They found out on the news the same way the rest of us did. I truly believe that we respond to that way, that in a very urgent manner, to make it clear to our citizens, to our community, that we believe that the order that we issued initially over a month ago is the one that should continue to be followed. And this resolution offers clear evidence for that. It has all the facts and figures, all the recommendations from the CDC, even recommendations from the White House. The governor's order doesn't even follow the recommendations from the White House. I do believe we should act urgently on this. I started getting text messages almost as soon as the governor left the podium yesterday. Text message from family members of folks working on the front lines in their healthcare industry who are terrified. I feel like the least we can do for our citizens is let them know that we have their backs and we're doing everything to convey the message that folks need to follow the protocols that were set forth over a month ago. I mean, this is a resolution. It's true. The governor has prohibited us, flat out prohibited us from passing our own shelter-in-place ordinance. It's a resolution, but in passing it in this urgent manner, I think it makes it all the more stronger.
Thanks, Commissioner. Moving over to Commissioner Neesmith.
I agree with Melissa very much so. I think, I'm satisfied by just making it clear that we're encouraging, we're not making law here. But two things, it just struck me. What the governor said was that local jurisdictions cannot make ordinances that are stronger than his. Does anybody know, does that mean they can make those that are weaker than his? It's just a question. The other thing is we're on second base. Maybe we're still on first, but now we're going to have to, and we would have to anyway, because we can't rely on the state to give good guidance to our citizens and our businesses. We're going to have to figure out when and how and what the criteria are for us to give guidance to our businesses. In other words, we can't just go here and stop and then wait for things to disintegrate one way or the other. We're going to have to figure out a way to give advice, just advice, to our businesses and our citizens about when it is to start for life to start moving toward normal. And so I know we can't do that tonight, but I think that's something that we're obligated to do. And I talked to a lot of businesses today. I had phone calls. I called a few. Not a one of them said they were opening anytime this month. All of them said, well, we're going to open maybe the first week in May, but we got to see the numbers. We got to see the numbers. We don't want to put our staff and our customers and ourselves in danger. So, we got a great town here, guys. People are listening and people are careful and people are thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think we all agree. I mean, we've been so impressed with the local populace and the local business community. And just as Commissioner Neesmith has articulated, I've spoken with dozens of business owners, all of whom have said that, we are struggling economically. We all know that's true. But those same business owners have said they care so much for their clientele and for their staff and everybody's families that they're going to continue to look at the science, as all of you have said. I do see Commissioner Edwards. Is your hand up again, or was that from earlier?
Yes, I just wanted to make clear that I do support the motion on the floor to change should to strongly encourage. I think, those two things mean the same thing to me. So if it makes my colleagues feel more comfortable, that certainly is fine with me to change language to strongly encourage. And I would like to stress again briefly that this is an emergency situation. Our governor in a press conference late yesterday released this information, and I feel like our citizens are craving guidance and leadership from this body. And I feel this body is called to act. And I think every commissioner has had a hand in the crafting of this document one way or the other. So I pray that we can get this thing across the finish line tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to move over to Commissioner Thornton.
We got to figure out these hand moves. I really didn't have anything else to add. I'm okay with whatever we decide on tonight, as long as we make a statement. So I'm good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We have a motion on the floor from, I believe it's from Commissioner Neesmith, second from Commissioner Harrod, to approve this, including those notes about those financial commitments that this government has made, and of course replacing the words should with strongly encourage where they appear in this document. So I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you all for your work. Before we move on to our regular agenda setting meeting, I do want to reiterate a note that I made to the public yesterday that we're going to begin a weekly series of open houses on responses to the COVID crisis tomorrow evening, and those programs will be between 6 and 7, the same place that you view these programs. We're going to begin with just a half hour of broad overview of internal government operations from Manager Williams and others. And we're taking questions from the public and looking for feedback from the public because we want to do the best job we possibly can. This first program will again be that broad sweep, but in future programs, we're going to be focusing on how we can best support small businesses, how we can support those unsheltered folks in our community, how we can support the Latinx community, families, and others who all need our help. So be looking for that in this space tomorrow between 6 and 7. We are now moving over to our agenda setting meeting, but I do need a motion for adjournment from our special called session.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take that second from Commissioner Davenport. I appreciate everybody. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We are moving over now, and as is always the case, we have on our agenda setting agenda a consent agenda that's comprised of items 1 through 8. And I first want to see, is there any commissioner who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to old business, which begins with item number 9. This is revisions to the Code of Athens-Clarke County concerning lost or stolen property and reducing the period that property is retained. Manager Williams, can you talk a little bit about the work that's been done on this in the time since our last session where we discussed this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think there were some really specific questions regarding the process that was followed. And so I think you wisely decided to table it, and we sent out some additional details this week. And just to clarify for the viewing public, this has to deal with property that's lost or reported stolen that comes into the possession of the police department. It is not connected to criminal evidence or seized assets, and those types of the disposition of those types of assets are guided by state statute. And just as a clarification of process, when lost or stolen property is entered into the property and evidence facility, there are evidence techs there that work for the police department that make every effort to identify the owner in order to return the property. If the owner is known, a certified letter sent to a known address. The techs also check social media and reach out to owners that way. All attempts to locate owners of the property are documented and linked in reports in the record management system. So all this is kept up with. And it's only after there's no response within 90 days that the property is placed on a list of property to be disposed by court order. And it's reviewed by the county attorney's office, and the order goes to Superior Court to be assigned. And after the order is issued by the court, then the property is disposed of. So there's a process by which we go through there. When the ordinance was set up, it was for 180 days. The state guidance or the state statute's 90 days. The reason that we were doing that was just to sort of make this, free up space at the police department and just move this along consistent with what the state was doing. So any questions about that?
Thank you, Manager Williams. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, my main concern with this item was assuring that multiple avenues are pursued to get the word out to the public that this property is available, that it's, that the time is running out to claim it. And I know we had that discussion, but I don't really see it reflected in this document. And I went on the ACCPD's website today, and they do have a public announcements page. I'd like some indication that this information about this property available is posted somehow publicly accessibly on their website. So, if you do have some stolen property or lost property out there, you can find that website and dig around and find this page that alerts you to how it can be reclaimed. So I kind of would, I know there's a point at which the property transfers over to ACC Central Services Department before it's offered for sale or auction, correct? And
That's right. They handle all the auctioning for us.
Okay.
In some cases, let's say that it's, and I've seen this before, if it's a series, several bikes, then the police department may donate that directly to a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd just like to work in some language, and maybe I can work this in through a commission-defined option that makes it clear that there needs to be some notice, some information that's accessible on the website where folks can figure out that this property is out there and have some clear process by which they can access it. So I'll work on that. We can talk more about it.
This is Commissioner Thornton. I would like to work with you on that also, Commissioner Link. I feel as though that, again, there's a group of people that do not go to our website, but we need to make sure that we reach out. And I do think that I'm not an expert on who goes to our website and who doesn't, but I do want to make sure that we're covering all avenues to let this information be more public and transparent. So if and when you do start working on that, please give me a call.
Okay. Yeah. Currently there's a posting in the newspaper. Once the property is transferred to Central Services, then it goes and it's posted, a notice of sale is posted in the newspaper. So I feel like folks who do follow the newspaper have that opportunity, but in this day and age, very few people do, and they might not necessarily be following those notice of sales in the newspaper. They might catch some headlines here and there online, but that's where I feel like there just needs to be explicit, increased statement of opportunity for people to know that this process even exists.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm certain that kind of in the time we have between the voting meeting that if you, Commissioner Link, and you, Commissioner Thornton, can work with staff, we can just make explicit that there are those routes for public understanding.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other comment on this before we move on? All right. Item number 10 is another item of old business.
Kelly.
Commissioner Harrod?
You missed my wavy hand. I just had a quick question. Because this started off with simply a request from the police department to reduce the number of days that they hold things from 180 to 90, which I understand is the bare minimum under state law. So I'm looking at our document here, and it's talking about when any such property is to be sold. Notice of sale shall give a full and complete description of the property to be sold, the time, date, place in terms of the sale, et cetera, et cetera. So that's no different from what we do currently, what they do currently. Is that correct? We're not asking them to do any more work in terms of documenting what's recovered stolen property. The only changes in the document that we have in our agenda packet is really if changing from Department of Central Services to Central Services Department, cutting it from 180 to 90 days, and that's pretty much it, correct?
It's my understanding.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10. Again, it's a prospective agreement between the Athens-Clarke County Department of Corrections and the Georgia Department of Transportation regarding corridor beautification. A couple of notes. I was able to get into contact with the Office of the Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Corrections for the state of Georgia last week to pursue the question that I know Commissioner Denson has had regarding the prospect of sort of a fee-for-service arrangement in which Department of Corrections inmates could be compensated. It had certainly been a longstanding position of the Department of Corrections that they weren't interested in compensating individual inmates in the county corrections units through which they partner with many counties across the state. And they have not returned a response to me, but they have acknowledged they're in receipt of my query as to whether or not a pilot project would be a prospect here in Clarke County. I will also note, just as we look at this item over the next couple of weeks, that one consideration could be whether there are some other kinds of supports that if the Department of Corrections was not favorable toward payments toward inmates would be similarly sufficient, given that we know that that essentially what would be happening if we were not to enter into this partnership is there would simply be movement of inmates to other facilities across the state. And I will give compliments to staff, including the diversion center and the corrections unit, that I think we are on the kind of forward edge of providing supports for our inmates. And so I want us to create every opportunity to provide as supportive an environment as can be availed in the state of Georgia. As we mentioned, even with the COVID crisis, there are times when we would certainly like to be doing things distinct from those things that are allowed by the state. But I think pushing to the outermost edge is the position that we can be in. So go ahead and open up for comment or questions. I see Commissioner Wright.
Thanks, Mayor Gertz. I had sent a question in after this was pulled off the other agenda, and I haven't seen the answer. So if we could just get us the information that can teach us. It's my understanding that the work details for hours worked, they get time off of their sentence. And if we could get that summarized so that we can all understand what that formula is for compensating them. I think it's time for time, but I don't know what the formula is. I'm interested in knowing how old that formula is, and maybe an avenue that we can work in is improving that arrangement. If that's arrangement's established, what can we do to improve it while we learn whether there is a fee for individual inmates to be funded? I mean, there are two different ways of compensating. One's currently happening, and if we could get those details out to the full mayor and commission so that we can learn that, I think that could help us as we learn the other idea. And it's, as we say, the technical feasibility of that.
What I can say broadly, Commissioner Wright, and I can get some more information from Department of Corrections on this question, and maybe Manager Williams could weigh in a second, is that inmates in the Department of Corrections system have a sort of trifold set of attainable goals that does reduce their sentence. They have a process called PIC points, and so there are educational pursuits, personal goals, and then behavioral goals kind of during time. And this work detail contributes to that system. But I can get you a little bit more information about that.
Yeah, that would be great. You said it was educational, personal goals, and what was the third?
And behavior.
Behavior. Okay, and yeah, that's a great starting point. And then when they get to where it branches into where the work detail, I think they call them the offender crews in this document. If we can learn what part of those three categories has that in it and how that formula looks compared maybe even to the other ways, I just think that maybe we could improve that formula.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I know that there is definitely some level of discomfort with using unpaid labor for any public project. And as part of our resiliency package, there's a proposal to create kind of a local works progress corps. would that be the kind of workforce that could do this kind of corridor beautification program in the future if we were uncomfortable with using inmate labor? And I also know that the inmate labor, they may not be monetarily compensated. There's some compensation as far as, time off their sentence or whatever. But I also understand that for many of these inmates, it's almost like a reward for them to get out of the jail, regardless of whether or not they're getting financially compensated. So, as we move forward with conversations about these kind of things, I think we need to get some clear firsthand accounts from folks who've actually worked on some of these crews, and understand the true feelings of the inmates who have, and perhaps even benefited from these duties. I know that there is some job training, benefits too. So I'd just like to know, about the resiliency package and the potential for this kind of work to be done through that, where we are actually paying local folks, and some more insight into how the inmates actually feel about these.
Thank you, Commissioner. I can say that the community core concept involves a range of prospective work, including trash, roadside trash pickup, and the prospective population for inclusion there are returning citizens, people who've been in prison, who are wanting to steer toward higher wage employment, but who need some employment as they endeavor to those workforce development activities. And we can certainly get more information about that as we'll become DAL commissioners over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Moving on to Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked at the last meeting that we reach out to GDOT about whether or not this funding would be available if we were able to pay the inmates ourselves, or if they would be open to crafting a budget for the project that would include payment for the inmates. I know we're still working through the feasibility of that with the Department of Corrections, but I was wondering if those contacts have been made.
I've been in conversation with GDOT. I think probably that Department of Corrections allowance is sort of the first link in the conversational chain. Manager Williams, I don't know if you've had conversations with GDOT or if there's any other perspective you could offer.
No, and Commissioner Parker, we did hear your request. I agree with the mayor. Really, the corrections is the first place to start. But I can still ask GDOT, even if we don't have an answer from corrections, if you would like to know that answer.
Okay, thank you. My other question was, and I think I may have brought this up at the last meeting as well. I guess the first thing I'd like to ask is a clarification of something that Mayor Kurt said regarding the provision of inmate labor to Athens-Clarke County. Would these inmates that are housed in county facilities but are being incarcerated by the state, would they still be in our facilities if this program weren't in place? I just wanted to clarify that.
They would at least be in some state facility, whether it was ours or another one.
They come to Athens-Clarke County specifically for the work detail.
Manager Williams, can you talk about how that intake process works?
Well, sure. So there are numerous facilities around the state where inmates are housed, and there's different security ratings, if you will, of inmates, and they come here. While I will tell you that Warden Covington and his staff are dedicated to rehabilitation of folks, and we can talk about some of the programs that they have out there. When folks do come to our facility, they are given the opportunity to work in different in ways. There's a lot of skilled labor that folks come. They may be masons, they may be electricians or plumbers, or if they show an interest in it, they work with our folks and they can learn more than they already did. So I'll go back with the warden on this, Commissioner, but not everybody in the prison facility here is working every week.
I wanted to double check. That was my
understanding. But most of them are.
Yeah. And so I asked because it's been the interest of some to see if we could implement a local program for folks that are incarcerated, like for local ordinance violations, things like that, as a way of circumventing this concern with the Department of Corrections about having their inmates be paid for labor that they do in our community. And I was wondering if Mayor Gertz had given any consideration to that, or if there's anything precluding us from looking into that.
So the terms of that, so I guess what you're suggesting is that for ordinance violations, providing some kind of sort of paid route through county work. One of the realities just of the kind of nature of local ordinance violations versus state law violations is that we don't jail anybody for ordinance violations, and so I think there are some community service responsibilities that do come with ordinance violations at times, but the system is of a very different nature than systems for which people end up incarcerated in a Department of Corrections facility. So it's sort of like two different populations. Now, a lot of the workforce development activities that we've been preparing, and some of this would play into the community core work, is really about taking those people who have had some measure of criminal record or some interaction with the criminal justice system and moving them into job training and then into jobs, including with the unified government. So there's some adjacencies there. But we could talk offline more about just sort of what those populations look like and how they intersect somewhat.
Yeah. I appreciate y'all's clarifications on those things. I just want to reiterate that I can't support this agenda item if we don't work out a way to ethically compensate folks for the labor they're providing our community.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, moving to Commissioner Thornton.
Thank you, Mayor. I may be in the same vein as Commissioner Parker. I wish we would have had something. I wish we would have had these kind of ideas when we first proposed the prosperity package. But that's behind us now. My concern is clear steps that people are able to advance and move up. I really want to see what that looks like. I am not supporting creating another pool of poverty, just giving somebody a job and they still can't make ends meet. I really would like to see some more detail on what this looks like. I know we're talking about our inmate population, but for me, it's much broader. I think the inmate population is a crucial place to start at, because if it's my belief, if some of the inmates had the opportunities before they went to jail that I would like to see them have now, they probably would have never been in jail. So I'm not trying to create a slave market or a poverty pot of people. So I would like to see more detail as this rolls out. And again, like I said, I wish this was a conversation we had before we had a pandemic. This is the kind of conversation that we should have been looking at as a local government. But it seemed like it didn't make no sense before, but it's real clear now. But we got to make sure that we are not creating another population of poverty.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, moving over to Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate you again trying to establish communications with the Department of Corrections, because, I agree, that's where we need to be. And it was unfortunate that those communications dropped off in the first place last year. And speaking to some of the broader issues here around it, and I just want to make some clarifications. Like I have spoken to some of the people who are service providers who go into our prison to work with some of the inmates, and they've had discussions about this, about the inmate labor, about the situation. And yes, they do enjoy being able to get out and do these things. That is absolutely, we need to continue the program. I am not asking or requesting us to end this program. It gives some relief and it gives a nice way for them to get out. The problem with the program isn't the fact that they're doing the work. The problem with the program is the fact that they're not being compensated, and that these inmates, these offenders, leave the prison. And this is all factual. We can look this up. They leave the prison in debt with legal financial obligations. So we have somebody who's already struggling in a myriad of ways, and then we expect them to get back on their feet, pull up their bootstraps when they have no bootstraps. They don't. We have them leave the system with debt. So I think, yes, this is a great program. We want them being out to go work, get some experience, get out in the sunshine. The problem is that they're not being compensated. That's the part we need to actually fix. And I think we can do that in a way that benefits them, while the county keeps the ability to recoup the benefits that they're already receiving from the program. And so I'm with Commissioner Parker. We need to see this through. We need to keep working on this. We need to find a way to get this done. It is in the best interest of our taxpayers. It's the best interest of the inmates, everybody. And while we're on that, and just because we touched on the subject, and I know there's been some emails going around, and that we brought this up before, that on the phone systems, this is just a request to Manager Williams. If we can do something about this, I want us to end our service with Securus. I want us to end our service with this for-profit telephone company that is standing in the way with their hand out for families who want to be able to talk to the individuals in jail or prison right now, both of them, because our corrections facility and our jail both use Securus. And this company is giving payouts to elected officials so that they can stay in work. But right now, these families can't visit these individuals. The only way they can talk to them is via the system. And they're being forced to have to pay into this if they just want to check in on their loved ones and make sure that they're okay. So I would like to see a permanent, but at the least a temporary halt on using the secure system, that we can have these calls just going through at regular cost and collect. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Manager Williams.
Yeah, well, just a couple things, and just the folks watching, this agenda item is about a grant from GDOT to hire an extra corrections officer who would have inmates out picking up litter on the loop and some of the state routes in Athens-Clarke County. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. And I will say this too, Commissioner Denson, we do have our diversion center, and this has nothing to do with the agenda item. I just wanted to speak to your statement about, we're turning people loose without anything. And I want to say that, the warden and the staff have worked hard at a transition center, and we've worked with the Department of Corrections. There are people, typically you don't house folks that are from the area from which they come in that prison, because it invites, contraband or drop-offs or things like that. So people typically go to other facilities across the state. But when folks get within 18 months of their sentence, paying their debt to society, our warden has established a relationship with the Department of Corrections where we try to get those people back here, and we start some classes, in that 6 months, 12 months run up to them getting out, and then we transition them to the diversion center and try to find them gainful employment, so that the point is that when their sentence does wear off, that they actually have a job and they do have income. So I just want to be sure that that may not work for every single inmate, but for many of them, that has been a successful operation, and it's housed in the diversion center, which I think was paid for with SPLOST funds. So there is an effort to try to give people a fighting chance when they do pay their debt to society.
And if I can just respond, And I do appreciate that, Manager Williams, and that there is things being done, and I don't at all try to downplay that there's good work being done, but simply showing the effort that there is a lot more that we can be getting done. And I don't think that the Department of Corrections on the state level and what they are allowing at this point, I think it actually restricts a lot of the things that we would like to do. And so I think that us encouraging this conversation to go forward so that we can expand what we're doing is necessary and hopeful. And I have all the faith that and hope that our warden would want to and would be excited to get involved in a new program like this that would even more so guarantee the success of the offenders leaving their facility.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moving to Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking at some of the numbers here. We got an average daily count in fiscal year 2019 at the Department of Corrections of 153 individuals. Athens-Clarke County spends or has budgeted cost per inmate of $40, but the daily cost is $61. We get about $21, $22 per inmate from the state. So we're paying $40 per inmate per day. The total hours worked by inmates in the county, 302,000 in 2019. So as we begin these discussions about paying for these 300,000 hours, we're definitely going to need state cooperation to increase. We're going to need state money to help pay for that. I mean, just if you did a little bit of math, let's say we're going to pay them $10 an hour. That's $3 million. That almost doubles the budget of our Department of Corrections. So I certainly believe, well, we've got to get state assistance. We've got to. So I think there's a great amount of support on the commission to do something like this, but we're looking at a budget ramification of $3 million annually. So I think we probably, let's start conversations. We need our state legislators on board with this for sure, to bring state pressure to get increased funding to support an initiative like this, is what it appears to me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to Commissioner Wright.
I had my hand left over. Sorry. Thanks
Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
Commissioner Link, is your hand still up?
No, my hand's not up. Sorry.
Okay. Moving to Commissioner Harrod.
Thank you. I think going back to what you said, Mr. Mayor, earlier on, I think we need just some more information from the warden about how these kinds of programs operate. I mean, I don't think anybody on the commission wants to have people who have just come out of the Department of Corrections system basically, just kind of thrown on the street, where many of them are doomed to fail and go straight back into the system. That is not a humane system for the individual person affected, and it's not good for the taxpayers, and it's not good for our society as a whole. But there are a lot of unknowns here in terms of the way in which the Department of Corrections, for instance, allocates, inmates who work on crews outside the facility. I'd like to know exactly, what's the formula for how much time that gives them off their sentence. I would like to know more about how inmates are prepared for leaving the facility after they've done their time. So, we got a lot of questions tonight, and I think for us to make an informed decision, we need to understand how this system works. I mean, what I would not want to happen, for instance, is for the Department of Corrections at the state level to basically say, well, to hell with you, Athens-Clarke County, and then we're not going to work with you, and then the people who are currently in the facility never have the opportunity to get out and to get into the sunshine. So I think for us to make an informed decision, I'll just say for myself, I need to know a little bit more about some of the minutiae, some of the details of how the system currently works. For instance, how do inmates who work outside the facility, how does that work to take time off their sentence? I know that it's a voluntary program. They're not forced to work outside the facility. I'd like to know, if it came down to a choice, either you can be paid for working outside the facility or you can get time off your sentence. Are there any studies that tell us what the inmates would prefer? So I just think we need a little bit more information before we decide whether or not we wanted to do this.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got that, and we'll be kind of routing that to appropriate staff members or state partners so we can create really what I guess I would describe as the arc of movement through the entire system. And then we can identify those places that locally at least may be well functioning and then prospective enhancements in them. Let's see, Commissioner Thornton?
I'm sorry. I guess I had the hand up. I have no comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll get some more information about the questions that everybody has raised. And now moving on to new business, item number 11 is our FY21 CDBG annual action plan. And then a public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, May 5th. So moving to Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Haley at HCD for hearing some of the community concerns and interest in restoring some of the power of EADC in the community, as well as their interest in recreational opportunities for the youth and being able to incorporate those things into the revised budget allocations we see here. So thanks, Haley. And thanks, everyone, for hearing me out on those matters.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link, did you have follow-up?
Sorry, I don't think so. I just from what I can tell in the document, we got a larger allocation from the feds than we expected, so we were able to accommodate that EADC program and add some more to some of the recommended programs. Correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right. Great. All right. Anything else on this item? All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item 12. This is our sewer use ordinance amendment, and we heard some information about this at our last work session. Any commission input or questions about this? Commissioner Link, I see your hand up on the icon. Any questions about number 12? You're muted.
Sorry, I'm working two laptops here. Yeah, I don't know why my hand keeps popping up. I must have my hand on the wrong laptop. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Herod.
I don't have any questions. I was just going to suggest we put it on consent.
Is that okay with everybody?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, 12 moves to consent. All right, moving on to item 13. This is expansion of the ACCGov, Athens Cultural Affairs Commission Arts and Community Grants during the COVID pandemic. Any questions or comments about this item? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the Cultural Affairs Commission for coming up with this program. Folks in our creative community are definitely hurting, and this is a really great way to give them some work and give them some normalcy. I know it's really painful for an artist or a performing artist to not be able to do their art. So I'm really glad that they brought up this program.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, I am really excited about it too. I'm really, really glad that they're moving ahead on this and providing some opportunities for artists right now. Because I know, as an artist, I know how hard it has been for all of us. And I wanted to ask that this get put on consent.
Everybody okay with this on consent?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Commissioner Denson?
Thank you. I'm also very excited about this, especially in the time that we have here, and I'm glad they're moving fast. My question was: is there, I guess, to Manager Williams or to Mayor Gertz, is there any way that we could increase this funding? Is there any way? I know we've had difficulty being able to put money directly in the hands of folks, but is there any way that we can increase this money so they can actually be able to help more artists that are struggling right now?
Manager Williams, you might want to take that one.
Sure. Well, you can always give them an allocation of additional contingency funding if that's something you wanted to do.
I'd like to work on a commission defined option then about trying to find a little bit extra money that we could put in place for this, that we could expand the number of grants that they'll be able to have. Athens is a huge music town, especially right now. Nobody's playing shows. I had this idea we could possibly be doing live videos from venues where they are paying the acts actually who will live stream from the venue. And we could pay an engineer from the venue to actually be able to record it and stuff. But for us to be able to just definitely expand this, that's a group I think that are really struggling right now that just we don't hear from quite as much. So if we can talk here in the coming days about potential ways that we could add some extra funding in there, I'd like to put a CDO together.
Okay, I'll go ahead and leave that off consent so we can look at what some funding prospects might look like. All right, Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I'm excited about this too. And also, I was prompted to talk to Aaron Barger and then to Stephanie Rains about some other things that are going on that I look forward to someday getting a good briefing on where they are with it. There's this concept that Stephanie is working on called the Athens Art Coalition, and it involves a whole host of organizations and people who are working in a more long-range, broader way at facilitating and nurturing our arts, all of them, not just performing, but all of them. So anyway, I'm really gratified, Blaine, that work is going on in leisure services in the arts division with Stephanie.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else on this item? Commissioner Wright.
Thanks.
You're muted, Commissioner.
Thank you. Since this is it seems like a perfect avenue to be supporting the artists in our community, might we use some of our previously known prosperity package money? Because according to my math, we had $4 million. We gave $800,000 to the neighborhood leaders. We have $3 million that's kind of moved over into the resilience package. It seems like there might be about $200,000 left, unless I've lost track of it. That maybe that's something we could move along faster than our joint development authority can do. Can we look at? Could somebody sort of capture that, or maybe
we did have a workforce development position and grant writers in there as well.
So I did. So there is. Okay. Well, we'll find. Okay. Tim, just let me know. I'd like to help find some money.
Actually, I think you're onto something there, Commissioner Wright. And just to be clear, so the prosperity package was initially $4 million. About $750,000 were allocated by you to the Neighborhood Leaders Initiative. Another couple $100,000 or so, $250,000, was allocated towards the grant writers. The workforce development coordinator was actually a general fund funded position, but it did come at the same time that you approved that. That was the same agenda item, which you're probably thinking about. So the $3 million would be a source of funding for relief, if that's the intent in which you're sharing it. That you could certainly access those funds for those purposes. I think it'd be consistent with what you were saying earlier.
Okay. All right. And so maybe as we move forward, we could get that summary of the $4 million and where it's been moved in and out of as a summary. And then it was confusing, I remember, on that agenda item because we had things that were coming from the general fund, economic development department. So if you could just give us a little summary of that, just to help us move forward and for the commission to find option that I'll be happy to work with you as well, Commissioner Denson.
Commissioner Neesmith?
Commissioner Denson, I too would be more than pleased to work with you on this. I think it's a great way to support our arts community, which is a major part of our culture and our workforce.
All right. Some work continues. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move on to item number 14. This is clarification of authority of appointed and elected officials under the personnel system. In some ways, this is sort of a vestige of some processes that unfolded upon unification of the city and county in 1990, and this is some new clarification. So is there anyone who has a question about this? Commissioner Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. Under history, particularly number 2, I felt that this background is a little bit vague. I was wondering if we get some clarification on how this agenda item came about.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll be glad to speak to this item.
Thanks, Attorney.
This item came out based upon some questions that we received from Sheriff Edwards regarding an amendment that was made, I think a little over a year ago, to the promotion review process, clarifying that process, and it was amended by our office, approved by the commission. I think not thinking about the fact that the sheriff is a constitutional officer, and we have other officers and representatives, elected appointed officials who, per state law, are not under, while they're under the personnel system, perhaps are not. They ultimately have responsibility for their employees, and so as part of this amendment is to clarify that the fact that while they're subject, the sheriff's office, for example, is subject to the personnel system. Ultimately, the sheriff under state law is entitled to have final say related to disciplinary action with his employees and promotional decisions. Now, those employees have a right in the personnel system to appeal that decision to the hearing officer, as any other employee would. But rather than going to the manager, the manager making a decision regarding an employee of a sheriff's office, it would go to the sheriff himself or those other elected or appointed officials in the government who are similarly situated to the sheriff, trying to provide consistency. And so that's the purpose of this, to basically correct and make that provision more clear and make it more legal.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate to include some of that context in the history section just to make clear where this is coming from?
Sure, we can look at the agenda item and try to add some additional explanation.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, it's amazing that we haven't had problems because of this already. I'd like to move this to as consent.
If there's going to be some amendment to the agenda item, don't we need to leave it off consent? Some amendment to clarify that history?
One opportunity we could have is just to have Attorney Drake and other staff members provide that additional context. Everybody take a look at it, and everybody's comfortable with that. Then we could move this to consent at our voting meeting.
Okay.
Yep. Commissioner Denson? Commissioner Harrod?
I was just going to say, at our voting meeting, we don't move things to consent. We would just vote on the consent items and then each individual item. So maybe if you wanted to put this on consent, the way is you put it on consent now, and ask for more detailed information that somebody could maybe, if they felt was really important, that they could then pull it off consent and add to the item at a voting meeting. Otherwise, you're going to have to leave it off consent.
We'll just leave this off consent for time being and get a little more information for everybody. All right, moving on. We've got item number 15, which is our calendar year 20 pavement maintenance project bid and award. Questions about any of these? Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, thank you. I had a neighborhood that I asked Blaine to have some extra attention to it because Davis Street and Davis Estates is getting repaved, but yet there's a cul-de-sac, a little court in that area that the constituents and residents over there say is just as bad. And he sent an email to cover that as well as some other ones that didn't grade as high. And to add this one court would add a little cost to it. And I was hoping that the manager could explain how that could be resolved at this point in the process. And I think it touches on some pavement areas that Commissioner Neesmith had.
Manager Williams?
That would be the Julia Ann Circle, Blaine.
Yes, sorry.
That's all right.
Trying to navigate several of these things. So
as we all are. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you all. And so, yeah, there were some questions about that. And, you know, we've got a scoring that was done back in 2016, you know, and then we've come back and done some rescoring here. One of the things that we said was to Commissioners Neesmith and Wright inquiring was that go ahead and award the contract. As the 2020 work proceeds, you know, we can monitor the actual expenditures against the bid prices. And if the mayor and commission wanted to add streets, you know, to the contract within the total and appropriation limits, you know, we can look at the lowest scores in any adjacency to streets on the approved 2020 list to prioritize a change order. And of course, you know, you could always put more funds into the program as well. But we would want to come back, and since you have approved all the roads in the last iteration of this, you know, this is just the bid and award of the actual work. But if you want to revisit that, that's something that, you know, we can keep you up to date with how the contract's proceeding. And then if there's an opportunity to add more, we can do that.
Okay, that clarifies it for me as far as this step and what would be another one. And I see some other hands up, so I'll wrap up mine. Thank you, Blaine.
Moving first to Commissioner Link and then Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, I noticed some streets on this list that are in desperate need of some traffic calming, and they tend to be in neighborhoods that are difficult to go through that neighborhood traffic management calming process. I'm particularly thinking of streets that are in the West Broad area, which does have some TSPLOST money allocated towards it. What would be the process to try and recommend some traffic calming measures be incorporated into these repaving? I'm thinking of Rock Springs. I'm thinking of Waddell Street. I'm also thinking about Vine Street in East Athens, which is a speedway cut through. I've experienced it. So could I get some clarity from the manager and maybe from TPW as to how we can maybe move forward with incorporating some of those traffic calming measures into this repaving schedule?
Well, Commissioner Link, you alluded to a process by which that currently exists, and that's a process which the mayor and commission could revisit and, you know, change the criteria if you so want to. In this case, as the contract and the bid states in the agenda item, this is for the streets, the rehabilitating the streets, resurfacing the streets, And that was the intent with the TSPLOST monies, to really get towards that road deficit list. And so that's what we're attempting to do here.
So from what I've experienced, the neighborhood traffic management program is very much a citizen-led process, which is very difficult in neighborhoods where you don't have a lot of homeowners, where you maybe have a lot of elderly folks, or folks aren't necessarily internet savvy, where they don't have organized neighborhood associations or listservs or things like that. How can we offer some assistance to these neighborhoods to get them into that process? Or if I could ask the mayor, maybe we could revisit that process. I mean, Rock Springs Street, and also how do we evaluate the repaving and the restriping of these streets? Rock Springs, I think, could possibly be a bike lane street. It's very wide. There's definitely need for some crosswalks. It's directly adjacent to the high school. What is that process? How do we evaluate for traffic calming?
Commissioner, I know one of the things that I think I agree with is that, we've got some streets for which those standard metrics really don't apply successfully, given the narrow width of the street and some other criteria. And so I'm interested in some prospect of a sliding scale, and I've had a brief conversation with Manager Williams about that, I think toward the tail end of last calendar year, beginning this calendar year. So I'd be interested in a future committee assignment to look at that.
What's the timeline for these repavings to be done? Because what I understand, you're going to do some restriping. You need to coordinate it with repaving.
Well, it's part of this. Staff does look at any repaving and, assesses the candidates for bike lanes, and obviously that's the time to do the striping is right after that. The timing of the paving and is going to be basically June to October, and it's temperature dependent.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So this is very time sensitive. I don't know if we have the time to pull together a committee and come up with new guidelines for our neighborhood traffic management program. And we do have a bike ped coordinator in TPW now. I'd be interested to know what she thinks of these. I mean, they brought forward the recommendation for Washington Street. So I'd be interested in hearing from staff, if they see any of these streets on this list as potential candidates for that kind of restriping to better accommodate cycling, whether or not it's bike lanes. Sometimes just traffic calming measures are enough to make it safer for cyclists.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I've got 4 streets in Forest Heights that 4 years ago scored 21, 23, 22, 22, where greater than 22 is very poor. So these streets have been very poor based on our old system for 4 years. And now their scores are where 41 is very poor. There's 61, 54, 51, and 40. So they're still not great, but they haven't gotten any better. So it's very confusing to me and to the neighbors about how we can have a street that was rated very poor 4 years ago, and now it's not getting paved 4 years later. We've really got to find a better way. And maybe it's because we're cycling in this new system and we're in some kind of transition, but our credibility, at least mine, is hurt quite a bit when 4 years ago we have traffic out there looking, our public works out there looking at those streets with the neighbors and go, yeah, this is bad. And 4 years later, still not on the paving list. We've got to get some of these kinds of situations straightened out, and we can start with these 4 streets. Blaine, we got to figure out a way to do this.
Well, just to clarify for the public, so pavement on average, its life is about 17 years, but that one of the variables that influence that are the amount of traffic that's on it. So highly traveled roadways are going to degrade quicker than, say, quiet neighborhood streets. And we are transitioning, as Commissioner Neesmith said, we had a pavement evaluator who would go out, and there was a form that they would fill out and try to objectively address what the issues were. And just since it's for the viewing public, the unified government and the mayor and commission for a long since has dealt with roads according to need, not to geographic area. So there's not an equal amount of money given to each district to deal with those district roads. It's all the roads are evaluated, and the ones that needed the most are given attention. And I understand Commissioner Neesmith, and I was standing out there with you on that hot day talking to those folks. The people really value their infrastructure, and they want to see it kept up. We did transition to away from a human-centered evaluation to automated, data-driven. This is our first year doing that, and so those are some different scores. And if you'll note, well, I should say the Commissioner Neesmith was referring to the scale, and they're different now than it was before, and that's what I think he means. I won't by confusing. So now less than 41 is very poor in the new automated, and before greater than 22. So that is very confusing to the average person. But we are converting to this new system, and we are also holding true with our 2017 deficit list. And it was said, back then, and folks have been paying attention to that. And to Commissioner Neesmith's point, some roads are grading at a more rapid rate than others. And so we're trying to get ahead of it. And I think one thing for a takeaway for everybody is the interventions that we use. Pavement is not unlike skin. And if there are cracks in the skin and water is able to get under that, it undermines the base of the road and the rock. That's where your potholes come from, and it becomes increasingly more expensive to fix the road. And so that's why we have, some may characterize it unsightly crack sealing that we do, but we're trying to get as much life out of the pavement as possible so that we can spend funds on other things in Athens-Clarke County that the citizens value as well. So, Commissioner Neesmith, I understand, and I apologize for the confusion, and we are trying to go to this new system and being more objective about the condition of the pavement.
Moving to Commissioner Neesmith, do you have a follow-up?
Well, yeah, I just, we have to take the human factor into consideration here. Just because we change the system doesn't mean that the citizen says, oh, my street doesn't need to be paved anymore because they're doing a different evaluation method. My street obviously needs to be paved, and it needed to be paved 4 years ago, and you're still not paving it. We need to take those kinds of things into consideration. That's what I'm asking, because it's not, it's just not right.
Commissioner Edwards?
I agree with what Commissioner Link is saying. This is a sizable contract. We're looking at $6.4 million almost. So I would urge my colleagues, if we see roads here where improvements can be made and efficiencies accomplished, then we need to go ahead and put that in motion now, especially in light of the pandemic's effects on our budget. Who knows where road paving is how it's going to be funded who knows if road paving will be funded at this level, in the future, or when it might be funded at this level in the future. So I appreciate Commissioner Link for bringing these issues forward. I think we should all take a very critical look at the roads on this list and begin providing input immediately for how those roads can be improved, and make this a more efficient process. Thank you.
Back to Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, I just want to say that I would be very much opposed to us deciding to do more than just paving streets with this money, because that means we will pave fewer streets. And that's what this money is for street paving. I agree, it would be nice if we had the efficiencies and we could do traffic calming at the same time, but we don't have the money to do that. And we barely have enough money. We don't have enough money to catch up on our streets. So let's keep focused on that.
Commissioner Denson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I guess on following up on Commissioner Neesmith's comments there, just make sure we're all on the same page. This repaving would also, these funds are going to cover us repainting the streets afterwards, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I think if we're talking about exploring traffic calming in the way that our street design is used, we're putting bike lanes in, if we're putting in, crosswalks or whatever we want to kind of talk about. And I know one of the things that we discussed for a little bit that a constituent had originally brought up a while back, we were discussing was the potential of exploring 10-foot lane widths on some streets. And so that could give us more room to be able to potentially do bike lanes. And that in itself, at least some of the studies show, is a traffic calming tactic. Has there been any more research looking into that from staff? And if not, is there still potential for us to be able to explore that on some streets?
We can continue that conversation. I know, at least in talking with Transit Director McDuffie, there were some concerns about the mirrors on our buses, and I've heard that. But certainly, and again, with traffic calming, and that's something I urge the commission to consider and talk about. I mean, certainly staff can make some recommendations, but if we need to revisit that policy, we will. But I do commit that we will give you a report of the bike and ped coordinator, Hillary Essig, her status of her review of these streets and what we are seeing.
Okay, thank you.
Back to Commissioner Neesmith.
Real quick, Commissioner Jensen, I agree with what you're saying. If we're talking about paint and things like that, and I also agree if we could find the appropriate streets to narrow them, that's a great idea. I was thinking more about the expensive speed tables and things like that.
All right, some more conversation will continue about this item, clearly. All right, moving on, we've got item number 16, which is our TSPLOST 2018 project number 1, the airport capital improvements, and this is sub-project number 3, the Taxiway A construction service contract award. Any questions about this item? Something we can move to consent?
Mayor, if I might.
Go right ahead, Manager.
There was just a call today with GDOT, and there is the localizer needs to be relocated, which is at the end of the runway. That was part of the last project that we're trying to move. They may want to include this in the bid and get all the work done at one time, which would cause a 3-week delay in this agenda item just so they could rebid that portion. And so this may get pulled. We're trying to work that out right now, but for now we'll leave it on.
Okay. Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, Blaine, because the localizers, we thought we were going to have enough money in the airport in revenues to be able to move the localizer, but we're not selling any fuel at all anymore. So, let's do whatever we can to accommodate them putting the localizer in the bid. FAA requires that localizer to be moved, by the way.
Commissioner Denson, I see your hand up on the screen. Is that for this item or was that for the last one?
That was the last one. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. All right, we'll move this to consent, but as Manager Williams mentioned, it may have to get pulled if this is coupled with an additional set of activity. All right, moving on to item number 17. This is TSPLOST project number 6, the Firefly Trail sub-project number 2, along with the recycled water main that's going to run under that component of Firefly. This is the construction services contract award. Any question about this item? Manager Williams, you want to provide any of the details that the public may want to know about this? I believe this takes us essentially from the Firefly Loop intersection to Hancock Industrial Road.
That's right, and thank you, Mayor, so this is an important segment, and it's been a long time coming. And so this would start at the terminus of the existing Firefly Trail behind the new racetrack that's being constructed, and it would go, past the loop and on out besides the quarry along Old Winterville Road. And so a couple things here of note. One is that we're working very closely with GDOT, and Mayor Gertz and the commission were successful in lobbying our legislators to advance the funds to go ahead and rework that intersection at Lexington Road and the loop. And so that bid we expected to be in June, and it's actually been moved to October. So they bumped it back just a little bit, but they've asked us to go ahead and begin construction, or at least driving the piles for the bridge section of the trail that would help cross the loop, the on-ramp, I should say. And so that was a little bit of of going ahead and moving this project forward, is coordinating very closely with GDOT on that. The second thing of note is that the Mayor and Commission have, through the service delivery plan, shown an interest to invest in our water resiliency and water independence for the future, and that is considering the reuse of water. And the water the effluent that leaves our water reclamation facilities is much cleaner than that which we got it out of the environment. And the thought being that, are there processes, whether it's industrial or the university, that can use what's called non-potable water? And so this was done as part of the first time that we did a joint public utilities and trail project was down at what is now the UGA Park and Ride at College Station. The Mayor and Commission approved the same contractor not only installing the pipe but building the trail, and what that saved was several $100,000 to both projects, in that the grading and the grassing and all those erosion controls all done at one time. And so as part of this agenda item you're being asked to consider, the thought is from the North Oconee plant, which is there at College Station, if we were to draw a straight line out to the industrial park, out to Athena Drive, then you would go right down Old Winterville Road past the quarry on the way out that way. And so this allows for a section of pipe to be placed under the trail as part of the same project, and that will no doubt save hundreds of thousands of dollars of doing that. So the purple pipe, or the recycled water main, is going to be in there, and then we will connect the pipe at some point in the future.
Any questions about this item? Commissioner Wright?
Thank you for that update on the funding of that. And Blaine, you said that they wanted us to go ahead and start establishing some of the supports. And to clarify, the trail is going to go under Loop 10, the new Loop 10.
So so Loop 10, the existing bridges that folks cross over on Loop 10 proper, yes, the trail will go under those bridges.
That's right. I just wanted to click.
But it will actually go over the on-ramp. So there's a plan to fix the intersection or realign the intersection there at Barnett Shoals Road. And so there'll be a new on-ramp that will, if you were coming towards Lexington Road on Barnett Shoals, going north, my understanding is there's going to be a red light there, and you'd cross the intersection and be able to go straight up and merge onto the loop. And so the trail will cross over that on-ramp as it goes on out towards Old Winterville Road. Hope that makes sense.
Okay, so it's going to go under Loop 10, but the ramp, the new ramp that's going to go in where they've kind of cleared all the debris, the vegetation, it will be an over, the Rails to Trails Firefly will be an over that ramp.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll definitely clarify this, but my understanding, Commissioner Wright, so when we first put this together, what they're going to actually do is it's a considerable grade as you go up towards the loop.
Yes.
So they're going to dig out and have a more gentler grade going up there. They're not actually going to be on top of the existing ground, but they're going to cut a trench, if you will, that will have walls on either side that, the cars will go up, and we'll just be going over the top of that. So the trail, in effect, is slightly over the existing grade. The on-ramp will be dug down into the ground.
That's incredible. I can't wait to see how that develops. It's going to be a great improvement there. It's always worse before it gets better. There. Okay, thanks. Sorry about
Commissioner Herod?
Yes, thanks. So yeah, as the manager mentioned, basically once this is all done, you'll come along Barnett Shoals Road, and then instead of having to turn left as you presently do to get on the loop, you'll just basically go up that hill. So that's the last time I looked at the GDOT plans, that was the plan. But I did have a question because as chair of the Rails to Trails Committee and chair of the Lexington Road Corridor Committee, one of the things that we had looked at in the past was with the $4 million of TSPLOST money, and after having looked at plans to renovate the Lexington Road corridor area, one of the things that we had talked about is a multi-use path in which would connect to the rails to trails, so that at some point, once the rails to trails gets basically by the current intersection of the loop, coming from downtown, it's going to kind of sort of dogleg left, I guess, if you're on the trail. We had talked about maybe having something that would go straight, that would connect to the Firefly Trail, but that would be a multi-use trail that basically parallels the current Lexington Road corridor. So my question is, approving what we have in front of us would not curtail that possibility. Is that correct?
That's correct. And to further answer your question, Commissioner Herod, it would be in keeping with the TSPLOST approved projects of the vision of going on out to Winterville as well.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Any other questions before we move on?
Consent.
Put this on consent. All right. Gene, we're going to move 17 to consent. Moving on to 18, another TSPLOST project, pedestrian improvements on West Broad Street.
Actually, Kelly.
Yeah, Andy.
I'm looking at it. I think it says contractor and bid to be determined under number 9.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll leave this off because we don't have numbers.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Number 18 is this West Broad Street sidewalk gap.
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Neesmith?
I think this is excellent. This is an area where the sidewalks would be used. It's also adjacent to Beach Haven, which someday is going to be publicly accessible. And it begins to connect our network out to the boonies, the suburbs. So this is a good way to spend $407,000 in my mind. I'd like to move it to consent. Maybe we can't. No, we can't. We don't have an awardee yet.
All right. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'm also happy with this project and seeing this sidewalk out here. This is a part of Broad Street where we've seen some pedestrian fatalities.
We certainly have.
Couple in very recent years. And I was trying to take a look at the engineering drawings to understand if there were any additional pedestrian safety measures in this design. And I can't really tell if there's an extra crosswalk being added. Could the manager speak to if there are any, aside from the sidewalk, are there any crossing safety measures?
And Commissioner, you mean crossing West Broad Street?
Yeah, I'm just not sure if what's depicted is what's already there or if there is some additional crossing. I feel like we really need to have a conversation about this stretch of West Broad and how to stop people from dying and getting mowed over in the middle of the street here.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, besides the sidewalk, if there's any additional safety measures.
Well, and I can verify this, but there are at Camellia Drive, there'll be some crosswalks, and those will be, I believe that's signal protected. And so there will be that, and the handicap ramp improvements as well.
So there might be some incentive to steer folks towards this crossing rather than crossing in the mid-block.
Yes, we would always recommend that.
And with the sidewalk, hopefully people would be able to access this crossing area more easily. Okay. Yeah, I hope we can come up with a way to do more here at some point, because it literally is a deadly stretch of road.
Commissioner Neesmith.
Yes. Yes. Mr. Manager, do I see at Camellia Drive, a four-way crosswalk where it's got crosswalk in 4 directions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's great.
Well, there's an existing crosswalk now that will remain, and the handicap ramps will all be aligned for that.
I see. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about this item?
Let's put it on consent.
Do we have?
I think we got a bid.
Bid
Okay.
outstanding.
Yeah, okay.
Still waiting on that.
All right.
Let's see. Number 19 is a recommendation to the mayor and commission from the Audit Committee concerning the process for receiving and reviewing reports from the Office of Operational Analysis. Commissioner Link, as chair of the Audit Committee, do you want to speak to this or have Auditor Maddox speak to it?
I'll start. This is basically just a little bit of housekeeping to, there were some changes voted on a couple years back to the audit process. And this is just an attempt to assure that other documents that are relayed to departments that are getting audited line up with that process. There's a flow chart that was being changed to assure that it lines up with the audit document that's presented to the departments. The auditor might want to speak some more about it. Stephanie, are you out there? She might not be on the call.
I see her on the grid. Stephanie?
I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Link. So this agenda item accomplishes 3 major things. It removes one of the process steps that was left on by mistake. And it also the new update will overlap with the internal audit process, that document that has planning, field work, and reporting on it. It lines up clearly with that, and that is a document that we discuss with department directors before the audit even starts. So that's at the very first meeting, we use this document to talk about the audit process. And the last thing is this flow chart updating this flow chart will allow us to add 3 additional steps that have been recommended to us over the last 2 years by commissioners. So on attachment C, the last line, those last 3 boxes are steps that have been recommended to us to formalize. So I thought we'd go ahead and just put it on the flow chart as a formal process.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Did anyone have any questions about this?
I'd like to see this go on consent if possible. Any objections to that?
I have my hand up, but I would like to see this go on to on consent also. We have really been trying to get the audit committee just heading in the right direction. We kept having glitches. I think putting this on consent will help us move forward with future audits. And it was a good report. It was good work. And I do agree with Commissioner Link. This needs to be on consent.
Thanks, Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Wright?
Thank you. I had when we talked about this last Wednesday, I thought that for clarification and just help me out, Commissioner Link or Ms. Maddox, similar to item number 14, there are entities in the unified government that are under the manager. And so that in 2018 was one flow chart. And then we had a separate flow chart for constitutional officers such as the sheriff, entities that aren't under the manager. And then that had a separate flow chart. And I thought that at the Audit Committee, when I brought that up, that it was helpful to remind us that if we're updating the flow chart, that both flow charts should be updated. Did I misinterpret that? Not being both charts? Because I'm not seeing both charts.
I don't know if you misinterpreted it. I do know that we didn't discuss that. We did discuss what is presented in this report, and I don't remember you bringing it up. So if there's something else you want to add, that might be good, but what is presented now is what we discussed.
Commissioner Link, do you remember that? I had brought it out, and I thought that Ms. Maddox I thought when I brought that up, it was helpful. Can you help me out, or am I missing something?
No, Commissioner Wright did bring that up at the Audit Committee meeting.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Wright. I did update the agenda item to include that additional flow chart. It's the attachment D, and it was emailed out this morning. I added the audit process for elected officials and constitutional officers.
Is
that what you were?
Yeah, because
this morning as a revision.
Okay. So I'm sorry I missed that. We had a very full inbox. So I guess we'll get those two merged together for the voting meeting, so it can be on consent, so that it's clear the steps for things that are under the manager, right? Which is this one, and then the ones that are kind of a different flow chart without the manager. And just to clarify, the step that's being taken out is where the departments get 30 days to review the Office of Operational Analysis's summary draft. Is that the part that's being taken out?
The step that's being taken out is the draft report is given to the department to verify the data and the findings before it is officially submitted to the department. We actually go over that process with the department during the exit conference. And so that was the process, that's the step in the process that we removed. If you're looking at attachment A from the third line, last box.
That's how I recall the conversation going. It's that third box on the third line. Because it basically exhibits a redundancy to the previous box.
So my question is to Commissioner Wright. Are you saying that the what was sent out is different from what we discussed?
I didn't see the two versions at the Audit Committee. Just one version came forward, but I had. You know me, I'm a pack rat with details and previous things that we've approved, and that we had also had it, the constitutional officers or offices not under the manager. And that's so it sounds like what's not in the agenda report that Ms. Maddox and her team sent out today. Is that, am I catching on now?
Yes.
That's correct, Commissioner Wright. It was emailed to the clerk this morning, and she sent it out to the full commission this morning.
Okay.
It includes the original document that was approved in January 2018.
Both of them.
It includes the update, yes, ma'am, for the departments under the manager's office, and it also includes an additional attachment for the elected officials and appointed officials.
And that's what I was referring to. So you did not see that, Commissioner Wright?
It's been kind of a busy day, but no, I did not. But I see how it's all coming together now. And then I'm fine if it goes on consent, if the people who aren't in the committee understand what's going on, and then that'll be merged together with what came out today.
Yeah, if we can just ask the clerk to merge that that extra attachment into the full documents for the voting meeting.
Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable putting something on the consent agenda when, excuse me, but the committee is still talking about it.
Well, I don't think that is the auditor's. I don't think that is Ms. Maddox's problem. Now, I don't have no problem. Wait a minute.
I'm not saying it is.
Wait a minute. Can I say what I gotta say?
Just want to hear one at a time. Commissioner Neesmith, just let me know what you'd like to hear, and then I'll hear from Commissioner Thornton.
Yeah, I wasn't finished yet. Yeah, I'm not blaming Ms. Maddox. I'm just saying that if you guys really are comfortable with it being on consent, and you really are in the same, on the same boat here, that's fine. But I think maybe we need to be assured during the meeting that you are.
I'm good with it going on consent if what came out this morning's merged with it. I just apologize for missing.
I didn't see it either.
Missing that. Well, remember we had lots of things coming out late today, and it just speaks to how hard everybody's working under these circumstances.
Yeah.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, I mean it's another flow chart that basically is the same as the previous flow chart, except it's for elected and constitutional officers, and it exhibits the same merging of that box.
I understand.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, just with the elected and constitutional.
All right. Okay.
So I'm going to still agree with Chairman Link that it goes on consent.
I'm not going to object.
Manager Williams, did you have a comment about the item?
I did on attachment C, and we talked about this in the audit committee meeting. There, in the process, there's a draft submitted to the department and the manager's office for review, and then the next down, just to the right, after approximately 30 days, the department's response is folded into audit report, and we talked about this, and I think everyone agreed that that's the department and the manager's office response. Just a small thing there, but I just want to make sure, since this flow chart is being approved as the process that is worded correctly, that's what everyone's memory was.
Manager Williams, I did go into the system last Wednesday and again this morning to update that typo. So I did change it, and I submitted the PDF to the clerk this morning.
Gotcha. Okay, and I'm still.
I did
right.
reload it.
I'm looking at the agenda online, so I'm sorry. Thank you.
No worries. It went out. If you all are looking for it in your email, it went out. I believe the clerk sent it out around 9 a.m. this morning.
Yeah, I'm looking at the document that came off the email. It's there.
Well, actually, I think I am too, Stephanie. So, Commissioner Link, are you seeing that too? It still doesn't say the manager's office.
Says elected I'm looking at the constitutional officer. After approximately 30 days, the department is folded into the audit report. It says submit draft of audit to the department and the manager's office for review and written response within 30 days. And then the next box is after approximately 30 days, the department's response is folded in. So there's a submittal to the manager's office and the department head at the same time, and then the 30 days for response happens.
Well, I guess, and again, this is the draft submitted to the department and manager's office for review and written response, ostensibly from both entities. Then after approximately 30 days, it should read the department's response and the manager's office response is folded into the audit report.
Okay. Well, I pretty much assumed that was implied, since the manager is over the department head, that would kind of be a kind of partnership process, since they're submitted together. I mean, to me, that just, I didn't even think that wasn't the case. Do we need to make it clear?
if there is this much discussion, because I know that I thought everything was submitted. It was late, but if there's this much, I have no problem pulling it to make sure we voted for it separately. But I think that we got to acknowledge that the work was done, and I guess that's the reason why we're discussing this now. So whether it goes on, it seems like we're being real. I don't want to say the word petty, but it seems like we're being a little nitpicky here. But I have no problem at just voting for it separate if that will clear up something county manager and any other commissioner.
So if we want to add a little redundancy to that language and make it crystal clear that, after the submittal of the draft to the department head and the manager, we can repeat after approximately 30 days, the department and manager's response is folded in.
Well, and I just want to be clear, since the word petty was used, this was exactly what we talked about in the committee, and I think everybody agreed to that. And I was just wanting it to reflect what was agreed to that day.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
So we'll leave this off consent and just add that extra clause in that next box to repeat what the previous box indicates. The department and the manager's response is folded in.
Sounds great. All right.
All right. Well, we can go ahead and make sure everybody has a chance to look at the correspondence they've gotten today, and if there's anything that needs to be edited or amended between now and the voting meeting, we've got an opportunity to do that. All right. Last item, number 20, is an ordinance under the home rule powers granted Athens-Clarke County to amend the charter of the unified government with respect to the police power of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, and for other purposes. One of the series of interactions that came out of some of our outside counsel support had to do with our need as the unified government of Athens-Clarke County to be very explicit about those powers and those activities that the unified government is authorized by the charter to take on, because of course we've been very clear, I think, as a body and with the public, in wanting to provide support services for the public at large, beyond even what we phrased last week as those indigent supports. And it was recognized that we would be best legally situated to continue those supports that certainly are going to be needed for some time, just if that language was embedded in our charter. Attorney Drake, I don't know if you want to highlight some elements of this or add anything to that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to. So currently the police power under our charter reads to exercise the police power for the public safety and well-being of the citizens of the unified government. And we're adding this language: without limitation, the unified government is authorized to make contributions out of funds appropriated therefore to eligible organizations for purely charitable purposes as defined by OCGA section 36-1-19.1D, to be used for payment of costs related to the relief of indigent, impoverished, or distressed citizens of the unified government in order to promote the public safety and well-being of the citizens of the unified government by thereby preventing the spread of disease, for promoting the welfare of its citizens, including particularly children and families, and mitigating the burdens of government arising from the indigency, sickness, and illnesses among the citizens of the unified government. And Mr. Mayor, would add that, charter amendment, this will require a notice to be published in the paper as for 3 consecutive weeks, as well as adoption at 2 consecutive regular meetings of the commission. So we'll adopt this at the May meeting and also at the June regular meeting.
Thanks, Attorney Drake. I think that outlines it well. And as you could hear in his description, there's that enumeration of this variety of activities that we would endeavor to do with local funds as part of our charter authority. I want to see if there are any questions about that. Commissioner Denson?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to clarify for public people who might be watching this later on, to my understanding, and Attorney Drake can clarify, my understanding, this charter amendment, this difference in the charter is one of the reasons at least why, say, the city of Atlanta was able to move forward with some of those activities while we were more limited in Athens because we had not amended our charter in this way. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner. That's a good thing to point out. You're exactly right. And also, I think we will also be adding for some broader authority. I'm hopeful in discussing with the mayor and that we could seek some legislative support from our local delegation in providing format even a more broader amendment as well when the legislature reconvenes. That would give the mayor commission powers exactly like the city of Atlanta. This is not exactly, we don't think as broad as what the city of Atlanta has. We think it's certainly what we need at this point. But we would look for more additional legislative authority down the road as well.
Okay, yeah, and I would definitely support us taking those steps too. But yeah, this is obviously important. It gives us that flexibility that we need. I think some people in our community, once we said that we had these funds and we wanted to start using them, people didn't understand why there was delays and there was some frustration. So this is one of our steps to try to clear that up, and it's definitely important because whenever emergencies, in which they will happen in the future, we will hopefully already have that flexibility in place so that we can react even quicker in the future. So with that, I make a motion for us to go ahead and accept this amendment to charter.
I think we have to see this at 2 consecutive regular sessions.
Okay.
So this is just on our agenda setting session, but then we'll see this both first Tuesday of May and first Tuesday of June. I will say I've been very clear with our legal advisors that we're not going to delay any aid to the public, but we're going to simultaneously sort of put this Band-Aid, as you might consider it, on our charter.
Looks great.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
All right, everybody. I appreciate your hard work. Thanks so much all night, all week long, and forward to seeing everybody down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.